Hello, 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 hello. I'm getting back into the habit of starting my casts with a song. Today, I went to the beach like I do every Wednesday. It was a beautiful time. Got to commune with nature, got to see what was going on. I hope you guys are having a beautiful day out there, and I hope you enjoy the song. These times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt. Nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry. I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's gold. The bullet cracks into his spine. He knows he won't grow. And as the tears come streaming down, at once his mind goes clear. The war was fought for nothing, he cries. I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. When it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the skies. They cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise a victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Peanut Butter Beatrice. Never seen you here before. Good to see you. Hope you're having a beautiful life out there. Compton, an absolute pleasure, my man. I hope you're doing well, bud. I hope you're doing well. I know it's been a spicy afternoon for you, my friend, so I hope you're doing well. Today is going to be the continuation of our regular scheduled broadcasting. Gabriel, XD, good to see you. XD coming in with a strong message redacted. Good evening, John. Got off my first day at work at my new job. Hope it's working out, Dragon Fruit. Hope it's working out. Hope it's working out. My advice to people who are starting new jobs is just keep your head down. Just keep your head down. Don't stir up any trouble. Not yet. Not yet. Find out who you can stir up trouble with. Pan, good to see you, my man. Good to see you, my man. So Israel calls on civilized nations. You know, all of those civilized nations. Those settler colonial states. Genocidal maniacs. Who, you know, cleansed their own lands. Created reservations and concentration camps within their own borders. And then went ahead with a policy of enslavement in order to build up their own material conditions. You know, civilized nations. Yeah, civilized nations, the same language Zelensky used. Yeah, this is white supremacist code, right? Civilized nation is how settler colonialists define their settler colonialism, right? Like, what's interesting, okay? Civilized nations. right? He's not saying civilizations, right? He's not talking about humanity. What's the key component is the nation-state system, right? Within that statement, that he cares about nations that are quote-unquote civilized, i.e. abiding by quote-unquote international law, i.e. doing what they're told, right? That's how this whole structure of language actually works. That's how this whole thing actually works. So Israel has urged what it calls nations of the civilized world to refuse to implement anti-international criminal court arrest warrants issued against its leaders. Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor of the world's top court, announced on Monday that his office had applied to a pre-trial panel for arrest warrants for 3 senior Hamas officials, as well as the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity during the Hamas attacks of the 7th of October and the ensuing 7th-month-old war in Gaza. See, even The Guardian just wants to call it a war. It's not a war. Right? It's a genocide. It's an ethnic cleansing. It's not a war. A war implies that there's two forces that are actually like fighting one another kind of on equal territory. They shoot, we shoot, they shoot, we shoot. Right? If you want to talk about it in terms of a war, then it's not a 7-month-old war. The war's been going on for 80 years. Right? We're talking about an 80-year war here. Like this is gonna be like the 100-year war, right? This is gonna be like that kind of a thing. So if you want to talk about it in terms of a war, that's what you should do. But if you want to talk about the modern current, what's actually going on in Gaza right now, it's a genocide. So even people who are willing to stand up and be like, no, Israel, we're not on their side, we hope that they stop what they're doing, are still unwilling to call it for what it is. DM, good to see you. Good evening, John. Glad to hear Klaus Schwab is retiring from the WEF. Chrystia Freeland would love to take that post once she's done with Canada. Yeah, I mean, the WEF is like a weird, creepy little Nazi organization started by a weird, creepy little Nazi so that all the weird little creepy Nazis can get together and share their weird, creepy little Nazi ideas, right? That's what the WEF is. You literally hear ideas like we should starve the populace, we should put collars on the populace, we should put tracking devices inside the populace. Like, just it's so obvious that the WEF's view of us is that we're cattle, right? That's so obviously what we are to them. Nice wall, good to see you. Nice well, rather, my mistake. So the response, of course, from the international community, Ireland, Norway, and Spain all recognize Palestine. So it's starting to happen, guys. Like, it's starting to happen. Like, the dominoes are falling. We haven't got the big thrust yet, and the big thrust is the ICC actually saying out loud, we should do this, right? That's the big thrust. Like, it not just the prosecutor saying, I recommend we do it, but the ICC agreeing with it and doing it. That's the big thrust. And the closer and closer we get to it, the more and more hysterical these people are getting. Because they understand that that is a turning point in international relations. They understand that they will be literally pariahs, that there will be places that they simply are not permitted to go, right? Like Ireland, Norway, and Spain, if the ICC releases arrest warrants, Netanyahu can't go to these places. So if they're holding a conference or if they're doing something, tough shit, right? Like, can Netanyahu go to the UN if he has an arrest warrant hanging over his head? I had one more thing about it. Shoot. I've lost it. I've lost it. I've lost it. I've lost it. Oh, well. The response, of course, from the Biden administration and from the system of capital generally is that they're going to sanction the ICC. They're going to go after the ICC. They're going to cause problems for the ICC, which is exactly what you want, like a rational, normal state that's definitely stable and not being ruled by like kleptocratic psychopaths to do, right? You definitely want a country to look at an international justice system and denounce it, and then say we're going to sanction it. Like, all the United States is doing by pursuing that line is showing to the entire rest of the world what? I say it all the time on this channel. What? What is it that they're showing the rest of the world? That they're unstable and untrustworthy. And they're not even abiding by their own principles. Which, in my view, is the worst thing an individual and the worst thing a group and the worst thing a nation can do. Right? Like, people will respect if you state your principles and then follow through on those principles. They respect that more than if you are saying one thing and doing another thing. Like, as long as you're standing up and saying, Resist over on Twitch points out, John, you're being too kind to them. They have no principles. Well, they say they do, right? They say they do. Like, you and I understand that, Resist, that they have no principles, but they keep pretending like they do, and that seems to be the most offensive thing, right? This is just what I was saying, is that people respect, like, they may disagree with what your principles are, right? They might look at your principles and say, that's wrong for X, Y, and Z reason, and we can argue about first principles, and we can argue about what principles we should be abiding by, and we can argue about that kind of thing. But at least if you uphold your own principles, people will go, okay, I don't agree with those principles, and I might even think those principles are destructive, but at least you're upholding your own principles and abiding by your own principles. And one expects a certain amount of leeway, compromise, or inability to uphold your own principles in difficult or stressful times. And so there's this, like, attempt to kind of justify your principles within the context of the situation, and to say that I used my principles in this way, and sure, the result kind of seemed a little counterintuitive, but the given the position I found myself in, right? So at least you're arguing from a place of, like, I have principles and this is my principles. People respect that. What nobody respects is somebody who states their principles and then literally is like, doesn't give a fuck about them at all. And then also expects everybody else to abide by their principles, right? That's exactly how the United States operates. They state their principles. They expect everybody else to abide by their principles, right? International law, right? International consensus. And then they never abide by their own principles, right? The only time they uphold their own principles is when it's convenient in the moment. And if that's how you are operating in terms of your principles, then exactly, you have no principles, right? You have no principles. And so, as is expected, and as everybody, and as nobody should be shocked, right? What's the result? The entire rest of the world is turning against the United States, as it should. It's high time, right? The United States has been a crazed lunatic on the world stage, and I don't see why anybody should pay attention to anything they have to say any longer. Like, what? Who cares? Outside of the threat, outside of the physical, violent threat that the United States poses to itself and the rest of the world, why should anybody give a shit what they have to say? June, good to see you, June. So a lot of the stuff I've got today, that thus concludes the International Criminal Court part of the news. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles. Now we turn to the ongoing encampment that has been happening at the University of Toronto. I live in Toronto, so I'm going to make this a Toronto section. There are many encampments all across America right now. UCLA is a big one. Given the violence that occurred there, it's still in everybody's mind. But what's interesting is Canadian media in regards to how they're treating the encampment. I've got two articles here. One comes from the Canadian Press, and the other one comes from the fascists at the National Post. So we're going to read these as a juxtaposition, to see if there is a difference or there is a disparity at all within the media. Someone comes in with the name The Opinionator. Strong name. The strong name. I bet you don't have strong opinions on anything, right? I support Palestine, but not communism. So The Opinionator, thank you for being here. Thank you for stating yourself clearly. I got no problem with any of that. I'm going to challenge you, and I'm going to say, and there's nothing wrong with this. I'm not seeking to offend you, but it's just a statement of the facts. If you are saying that, it's likely because you don't know anything about communism. Like, I've had this conversation maybe 1,000 times now. And I've learned that the best thing to do is to cut to the chase, get to the bottom of it, and just say outright, you don't know anything about communism. The things that you think you know are likely just CIA and sometimes even Nazi propaganda that are just being jammed in your face, that are debunkable, right? It's easy to point out major and massive catastrophic flaws in reasoning. And that most people just uphold this idea that communism is bad because it's an in-group think thing, right? My government, my school, my media all tell me that, all owned by capitalists, tell me that communism is bad, and I'm a free thinker, so I agree. So I don't actually take that statement very seriously, because I am of the belief at this stage in the game that the only people who are against communism are the people who don't know anything about it. And that as soon as you learn something about it, and as soon as you understand that you've been caught in this enormous system of propaganda, like the McCarthy period happened, like this enormous propaganda says that the CIA was created to be an explicitly anti-communist organization. And as soon as you kind of understand that and step out of it, you can begin the process of actually learning something about the subject. So if you'd like to learn something about the subject, feel free to ask questions, feel free to probe. But the only thing that I have absolutely no tolerance for is the idea that you're an expert and I'm not, right? That you understand the subject, which you don't, and that I don't understand the subject, which I do. So let's just put that forward as it is and move forward from there. Welcome. So, university encampments highlight critical issues on the right to protest. The article was originally published in The Conversation, etc., etc. The array of student encampments on university campuses in protest of Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza has raised another round of questions about the extent to which protest should be tolerated in liberal democracies, and under what circumstances. Right? Here's the system of power trying to remove your rights. Right? Here in Canada, the Supreme Court has decreed this several times over the last decade. You have the right to protest. You absolutely have the right to protest. You can shut down streets. You can shut down bridges. You can protest in front of buildings. You can obstruct. You can do all kinds of things here in Canada, and you have the right to do so. Right? That it is the responsibility of your elected body to communicate and deal with protesters in order to meet their demands, not the other way around. And here they are trying to remove that right from you. It's important to understand the nuances surrounding these protests. Some are, of course, easy to answer. Do citizens have the right to protest? Absolutely. Should protests be treated differently based on the message it wishes to promote, save for incitements to violence and the flagrant promotion of hatred against an identifiable group? Absolutely not. But, here we go, matters become more complicated when determining appropriate places for protest to be carried out and the length of time they should be allowed to continue. Right? So we're going to take these protests and we're going to put them in a corner. Right? We're going to put them in a corner so that we can ignore them and forget about them. Right? Because oh, sure, you can all gather in a group in the middle of a desert in Nebraska. Sure, that's completely fine. Universities, public or private property. Questions of place often concern the distinction between public and private property. Now you're seeing why the concept of private property is such an abomination, right? Oh, you're not allowed to protest on private property. That's private property. I killed a bunch of First Nations people to get that property. That's private property, privately held. You can't come onto that property. It's private property, right? So if everything's private property, then protest is effectively banned, right? And so now they're asking the question, wait a minute, aren't universities private property? Well, then we should get these protesters off here, right? This is the process by which they will effectively ban protest in this country. Since universities are situated on private property, so the argument goes, they should have the right, as a homeowner would, to evict people at their discretion. But the matter isn't as simple as that. Courts are notoriously divided on the question of whether universities are public or private institutions, and are consequently also divided on whether protections under Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, particularly the right to free expression and assembly, apply to them. Alberta, I'm sorry, man. Like, imagine believing that universities are not public institutions. Like, imagine being such a fraud and such an intellectual hack that you actually believe that the institutions by which we educate our children are not public institutions. And imagine trying to wedge into that concept and that idea that that we should have a private class of citizens that educate their children in their own way, with their own rules, that are cloistered away because they have economic superiority over us. Like, it's just like, let's allow demons to run our society. Sure. The Alberta Court of Appeal, of course, right? The Alberta Court of Appeal, the most fascist province in the Union. The Alberta Court of Appeal has declared the Charter does not apply to campus-situated expression, while the Ontario and British Columbia Courts of Appeal have suggested the opposite. But, one of the things that I've really noticed about the Ontario bureaucrats, the bureaucracy itself, understands that, we don't want to get into a conflict with the populace. That's not what we're interested in. There's so many situations where politicians and lawyers and losers get into positions where they make these big decrees, and then the police themselves are like, we are not doing that. That is not going to happen. During the COVID period, Doug Ford tried to institute a stop and frisk policy, which it's just like a nakedly fascist policy. And the police basically looked at him and said, we're not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're in a good position when the police are less fascist than the leadership. The captain, good to see you, my man. But even if we put aside the issue of whether the charter protections do in fact extend to campus environments, it would be misguided to treat universities and private residences as equivalent, because campus spaces are used in significantly different ways and for different purposes than people's homes. Yeah, it's almost like they're part of the process of building a civilization. Right? It's almost like universities and schools exist in order to train people to interact with the means of production. But if you base your thinking in the false Western theory of dollar primacy and financialization, and you don't actually understand how economics or society or civilization work, then you can just be like, private, get out, private, no, my private ownership of the means of production matters more than civilization itself. So no wonder we're in a free-fall collapse, right? No wonder there are people protesting in the first place. And no wonder our political class has no idea how to deal with these protesters, because we don't understand things like basic diplomacy. We don't understand the purpose of having elected officials in the first place in any reasonable kind of sense. One of the things I was really thinking about, I was on the beach today and I was looking out, and it really struck me, because we got talking about Trotsky and Stalin for a moment yesterday, and I don't really like to bring it up because it's tedious. There's a lot there, and communists just while away at it, and it just becomes this oh my god, shut up, who fucking cares? But it really dawned on me today that the reason why communists really get at this point is that that's actually politics, that there was actual politics there. There was actually a political moment that actually happened, that actually had meaning, where it was actually possible that a nation actually would go in a different direction, actually. And so, of course, we can't let it go, because it was one of the only moments in, like, recent memory, not even recent memory, in, like, Western civilization where there was actually politics that happened. It's like, everything we're watching now is just, like, bereft of politics. Everything is literally just rich people going, I want money, fuck you. And that's it. That's the whole conversation. So it really dawned on me that, like, oh yeah, like, of course we're fascinated by it. We're here for politics, and it happens so rarely that when it does happen, we're fascinated by it. Even before property rights enters the discussion, a protest movement that took place in someone's backyard would quickly lead to an uncontroversial and undesirable claim of nuisance. People need to sleep, and they have a valid demand, especially in their homes, to be able to carry on their plans with relatively little obstruction from outsiders. I just love this paragraph. It's just like a total, like, admission that psychopaths can dominate people in the public and should be left alone. Like, no, they shouldn't. Like, they really shouldn't. Like, if you're acting like a psychopath in public, yeah, we should surround your house. Like, tough. It is precisely for this reason that even though the so-called Freedom Convoy protests were held in a public space in Ottawa, a court found it reasonable to grant an injunction aimed at reducing the excessive noise the protest inflicted upon residents in the area for several days. A little bit different than let's clear the encampment, right? The rationale wasn't that the complainants had a right to dictate how the public space was used. No individual or group in society should have that kind of authority, but that the particular way the space was being used by the protesters was causing a nuisance. So you see here how the focus of the negativity is placed upon the protesters, right? That we need to take action against protesters. We need to do things against protesters. And the opinionator, you're going to find that you and I agree on that. The Freedom Convoy had the right to protest, and I'm making this point right now. It's on the shoulders of the government to deal with protesters. It's on the shoulders of the elected officials to deal with protesters. And the way to deal with protesters is to speak with them. Listen to what they have to say. Do politics. Right? Do politics. You know, that thing that we don't actually do in this country? We have this, like, WWE show that we call politics, but it isn't politics, because the winner is always a fascist Zionist capitalist. Always, 100% of the time. And there's nobody who's even permitted in the race who's like, maybe we should house homeless people. Well, that's commie talk. Well, communism, 100 billion dead for the iPhone. Like, we're embarrassing. We're just embarrassing people, constantly embarrassing ourselves. And even an article that's trying to position itself as being like, let's be centrist. We're going to be centrist and talk about this from the centrist, objective, unbiased position, isn't mentioning that the Trudeau government is the one that's responsible for dealing with protesters, that it's the people who are in power that need to talk to protesters and need to accommodate protest. The idea that the Freedom Convoy was even there in the first place is a total indictment of liberalism itself, let alone the Liberal Party. They should never have made it there. The Liberal Party should have been like, well, here come the convoy truckers. Who's the leader? Doot, 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 doot. Hey, can we have a conversation? Yeah, can we have a talk about this whole Freedom Convoy thing you're doing? Yeah, what's going to make this whole thing blow over? What can we do? Right? And you know what the convoy's demands actually were? Like, literally, what they actually were? Us 1,000 people don't want to get the jab. Okay. We're done? Get back to work. Like, who gives a shit? Like, that's the thing that was so fucking blistering about the whole thing, was just like, just say they don't need to. Who gives a shit? It's 1,000 people who are literally alone in a truck for most of the time. They're not going to have an impact on anything. And the idea that they would is just like hysteria at the highest possible level. And as we get further and further away from it, and as the data starts to settle down, we're all seeing that that's true. 1,000 people not getting the jab is not the fucking apocalypse. It's not going to destroy civilization if 1,000 people don't get the fucking jab. Who gives a fuck? The idea that there's truckers out here being like honk honk to the point where they need to do an injunction against them, right? Where's the liberals? Why am I supposed to care more about a ragtag group of truckers than our elected government that has control of the military? How come literally nobody ever brings up ever that the Trudeau government could have just come down from the hill and been like, hey, what's up? You guys, you don't want to get the job? Okay. Yeah, a small group of truckers don't have to get the job. There you go. Get the fuck out of here. Like, it's such a non-issue that got blown into this huge thing. And then Trudeau had the absolute audacity to say to all of us, he had the absolute audacity to stand up and say, of Canadian citizens, these people are Nazis. Shut the fuck up. Literally, the guy is walking out in front of us in blackface, honoring a Nazi in front of a Ukrainian president, being like, those guys are Nazis! Shut the fuck up. So embarrassing. Like, so embarrassing. Like, an international embarrassment, this Trudeau guy is. Yeah, Yaroslav Hunka is a good guy. Just because he pledged a fealty oath to Adolf Hitler and joined the Waffen-SS and explicitly wrote in his diary that he was looking forward to rounding up Jews and Poles and putting them in concentration camps, doesn't mean he's a Nazi, okay? Urban campuses and university communities. University campuses do not face this same challenge. Quite the opposite, in fact. Even those that are set within urban areas like McGill University and University of Toronto, or my own institution, the University of Windsor, are large enough that they operate at a distance from anyone who isn't part of the university community itself. As a result, the likelihood that a protest movement carried out in these spaces would cause a public nuisance is low. The question then becomes whether the current encampments are causing excessive disturbances to the reasonable enjoyment and or use of that space by others within the university community. What's the point of a protest? Like, for fuck's sake, these losers. Just these, and this is the centrist, okay? This is like the liberal. This is the guy being like, now let's discuss this reasonably, everybody. Let's take both sides and see if we can... What's the point of a protest, you fucking dimwit? This is what the universities are churning out, by the way. This is what the universities are churning out. A bunch of goddamn dimwits that are standing there being like, protests shouldn't cause disturbances. Then what's the point of them? What's the point of them? If you're just going to stand up and basically say, protests shouldn't disturb the peace, then you're basically just sucking the cock of power. You're basically just looking at Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh and essentially saying to them, you can do whatever you want, and when protests show up, we'll all go, that's bad for you to protest, and completely ignore the leaders that they are protesting against. That why isn't the expectation, hey, a bunch of protesters showed up, deal with this. Fucking deal with this, guys. There are people in your society, citizens in your society, that have such a large grievance with what's going on that they are taking their lives and their free time in order to cause disturbances to get your attention, in order to focus your attention. And instead, we're all just supposed to shake our fingers at them and completely ignore what the job of our elected officials is in the first place. Embarrassing. Right? We're an embarrassing people. This is an embarrassing article. And this is the article from the quote-unquote left. This is the centrist article. I cannot wait to listen to what the fascist has to say. The opinionator writes, oh wow, a communist who isn't against the working class truckers? W? Rare unicorn? Yeah, like... My alliance is not along the ridiculous liberal conservative line, right? My alliance is with workers versus capitalists, right? Workers versus capitalists. And whether or not you want to argue that the truckers are part of like the lumpen proletariat or whether because they're owner operators or any of this kind of stuff, they're closer to you than they are to the capitalist class by a lot, by a mile. right? So the thing that's so disgraceful about this whole conversation is that we're just not supposed to have class solidarity. We're just not supposed to have class solidarity with these people. We're not supposed to have class solidarity with protesters. We're not even supposed to have national solidarity with these protesters. We're not even supposed to say these people are citizens. Their concerns are they believe so important that they need to come out and protest, and you're just gonna fucking ignore them. Just embarrassing. Just embarrassing. Like, I'm sorry. It's an embarrassment for our elected officials to just ignore major protest movements and then publish these articles that basically are training us as the reader to look at protesters as exclusively and only a nuisance and a problem, as opposed to, no, those are citizens. Like, those are my brothers and sisters. Those are people who live in my community. Those are important people in our society. If truckers don't deliver goods, you don't get goods. If students don't get trained in universities, then you end up with a society full of stupid people, which we've already gotten there given these articles. Okay. Although this question can only be answered on a case-by-case basis, we should have a policy of destroying protesters. It would appear that, to this point at least, arguments that have raised this concern have not been persuasive. Yeah, of course they haven't been persuasive. You're trying to tell us that protests, which are by their very definition disruptive, should not be disruptive. From my limited observation of the encampment at the University of Windsor, why are we listening to you? Why are you getting published? Like, this is the thing that kills me, is that whenever these capitalists send us their best, it's a loser. Like, a total, flagrant, ridiculous, childish loser. Just somebody who's literally saying things like, my daddy gave me billions of dollars, and so you should get your daddy to give you billions of dollars. Shut up. Oh, it's just pissing me off so much. Holy cow. Ugh. Ugh. From my limited observations of the encampment at the University of Windsor, the way that protests are using the university space is precisely in the way intended. They are hosting teach-ins, simulating intellectual discussions and growth amongst participants, and generally demonstrating a high level of critical reflection on an ongoing humanitarian crisis. Yeah, they're teaching teachers how to teach. Like, the further along I go down this path, the more I really realize that these university professors are clueless idiots. Like, really clueless idiots. Just they were trained by morons to be morons, and they are morons. And I'm really just seeing that's the case. Ever since Peterson, I've really started to take a and then ever since Richard Wolff pointed out that economics professors are illiterate, and they are, to an individual. They're all illiterate. Once I realized that, I was like, oh, these universities are fraudulent. Is there anyone in the university system that's actually, trained and actually reads and actually knows anything? Doesn't look like. This leaves the question of time, specifically how long a protest action should be allowed to continue before the state intervenes. Isn't it great that we believe that state intervention is send in the cops and clear out the encampment? And at no point does state intervention mean negotiate, diplomacy, maybe acquiesce to some demands, maybe concessions, maybe even talking to them. None of that. When does the state intervene? We just need to decide when it's okay to send in the cops and clear this place out. So I'm sorry, guys. I said that this was the liberal. It's just another fascist. State intervention, right? When is this guy going to talk about diplomacy, negotiation, concessions, the fact that who has power in the society? No, it's not going to happen. Oh, just another fascist. All things equal, it's clear that the more disruptive a protest movement becomes to the enjoyment that others can reasonably expect from a given space, the stronger the argument is for state intervention. So again, this guy's a fascist. Like, this is a fascist argument. But there is an important caveat here. Because protest movements can be so different from each other, it's impossible to generalize when it comes to the relationship between disruption and state intervention. No, it's not. You're doing it right here. You're not mentioning who has power. You're not mentioning the purpose of a protest. You're not mentioning why people should be in protest, nor are you mentioning the job of your leadership to negotiate and find concessions in order to find a compromise with protesters, which is the entire purpose of protest. You fucking dim-witted fascist. University of Windsor. Just a total indictment of of our education system right here. As Irish legal scholar Ilyan Ruwal has convincingly, well, I'll be the judge of that, argued, in order for protest movements to execute their communicative aims, they must by their very nature be disruptive. Yeah, there we go. Irish legal scholars getting it right. Leave it to the Irish. Yeah, one would think that the point of protest is to protest. Yeah? One would think that the entire point of having a protest is to protest. Popular marches disrupt traffic. Sit-ins disrupt business environments. Students encamped on university campuses disrupt other uses that might be made of space. To the extent that we as a society are committed to protecting the right of citizens to protest, we must also be prepared to tolerate its innately disruptive elements. When are you going to mention the job of our leadership to negotiate with protesters? When is that going to happen? Like, this person just doesn't have any standards for their leaders. This person is literally just like, oh, you want an election? My liege, lord, whatever it is you say, yes, you want a popularity contest. You are my king, yes, my lord. What a pathetic person. This sheds light on the time-related considerations that pertain to the student encampments. Unless and until the encampments become an unreasonably severe disruption to the enjoyment of university spaces by members of those communities, there is no time-related argument that supports state intervention. So, for real, this person's whole point is, if they start causing enough problems, we should send in the cops. Right? You know what would really destroy or disrupt the enjoyment of a space? Bombing the shit out of it like the Israelis did to Gaza. Bombing the absolute shit out of it, I think, would diminish the enjoyment. And the whole protest, guess what, surrounds the idea that the universities are funding that. You fucking dim-witted, clueless little fascist. Suggestions that participants have had ample time to make their point and should therefore move along ring as hollow as they are infantilizing. Like this whole fucking article. Jeff Gallahan received funding. Right? Like, this article is published by The Conversation, Creative Commons license. So this guy's name is Jeff Callaghan, assistant professor of political science, University of Windsor. In The Conversation, this is the trash that's getting published, you guys. This is the absolute garbage that's getting published on the left of The Conversation. Literally nobody in any university, in any institution, is standing up and pointing at the government and being like, isn't it your job to deal with this? Isn't the whole reason we elect you into politics is to do politics? Isn't that the whole justification for you being our leader in the first place? And this guy, who claims to be a political scientist, assistant professor in a university, is basically just shunting that aside and saying, lower your expectations. You don't want to disrupt your leadership. You don't want your leaders to be uncomfortable. It's just embarrassing shit, dude. Like, The University of Windsor has this guy as an assistant professor. Don't go to the University of Windsor. This is the quality education you're getting. Make sure you suck the cock of Trudeau. Every time you see him, make sure you jerk off to the flag. Fuck off. Ugh. Frustrating. So let's now turn to the more honest side of the conversation, the fascists. This is from Brian Schwartz. The University of Toronto has abandoned its promise to prohibit hate speech and intimidation. Right? The University of Toronto has abandoned its promise to prohibit hate speech and intimidation, says the people who support a genocide in Gaza. Okay. Silva, the conservative hero, good to see you again, my friend. Glad to see you again. I'm prepared to take down Irish legal scholar opinions on more significant. Yeah. John, it sounds like you were agreeing with this guy, though. He's agreeing with students in the Irish Scholar. He's just not going far enough, obviously. No. He's doing that pathetic centrist thing, where he's basically, I'm an enlightened centrist. Look at me, the enlightened centrist standing amongst a genocide. Right? One side is obviously genociding another side, and there are people protesting. Let's have a robust discussion about the nature of protest while decontextualizing it from what's actually happening and what is real. Let's not bring up at all that the whole purpose of protest is to stick your thumb in the eye of power and to make people pissed off so that they get pissed off at power. This guy is actively trying to promote the idea that it's correct to be pissed off at protesters. No, it's absolutely correct to be pissed off at protesters. And there does come a point when protesters go too far after being completely shut out by the system of power. It is not the responsibility of the government or any ruling party to negotiate or talk to these people. Under no circumstances should that even be brought up. That's that guy's job. It's not that he's not going far enough. It's that he's omitting a key linchpin point. A key, absolute, crucial linchpin point to the principle of protest is to galvanize the public against power. This guy's just training us to hate protesters. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that he is a professor, and even an assistant professor. It's embarrassing that he is a political scientist. It's embarrassing that he's at the University of Windsor. It's embarrassing that he's publishing articles in The Conversation, and literally nobody is going like, are you going to mention, like, the center of the argument at all? Like, the actual, like, point of the whole purpose of protest? Are you going to talk about, like, how the centers of power are not responding to protest? No, we're just going to create an argument that says there does come a point when it's okay to send the police in. Oh, okay. Creepy little fascist. So, from the fascists, earlier this month, the University of Toronto joined other leading universities as hosts to uninvited encampments. I love it. I love it. Haley, good to see you. Good to see you. CH, just me, good to see you. I'm sorry, man. Just like, I love this first statement. Earlier this month, the University of Toronto joined other leading universities as hosts to uninvited encampments. God, what a bunch of idiots. Of pro-Palestine in quotations, because they really want to say pro-Hamas, right? That's really what they want to say. Right? So they finally recognized that, okay, I guess we need to maintain some kind of intellectual credibility in this conversation. We can't just say pro-Hamas, right? We'll leave that for the Sun. Many protesters are neither students nor staff at these universities. Who cares? What's the point of bringing that up? Right? It's just another kind of sticking point to say that we should be against protesters, and we should not bring up that the entire point of protest is to have the system of power respond to it. They nonetheless demand that U of T divest from investments in Israel and severely sever scholarly ties with Israeli academics. At least the fascists are saying what the point of the protest is. Media reports and editorials have praised the protesters' support for human rights and compassion for Palestinians in Gaza. There you go. Fascists telling the truth. This is actually what I love about fascists when compared to liberals, right? Liberals are sniveling losers who like try to play this game that they actually care when in reality they are actually fascists. Fascists are just fascists. They're just going to come out and be like, this is the situation. There's this, so we should send the police in and destroy it. I could not agree more with the need to protect innocent residents of Gaza from harm. And of course, innocent residents of Gaza is nobody, according to fascists, right? Because they're all Hamas. And endorse the right to peaceful protest and civil disobedience, if I agree with it. But this encampment is not a peaceful protest, right? Got it. Check mark. If I agree with it, then it's a peaceful protest and it's civil disobedience and it's important, we should defend it. If I disagree with it, then it's not a peaceful protest. And here's my argument for why this peaceful protest is not a peaceful protest. It is an intimidating and sometimes violent event that, while professing to be an anti-Israel rather than anti-Jewish, deepens the problems of anti-Semitism on our campuses, bud. Straight up, right? Like, it's all they've got left. It's all they've got left. It's like, it is an intimidating and sometimes violent event. Literally every protest movement in the history of mankind, right? If your standard for a protest movement is that there's no violence or vandalism or mischief ever, then you're basically essentially banning protest. You are telling me that it is okay to ban protest because one guy threw a rock at someone once. Like, so, and of course they're going to push on that. They're fascists, right? And then, of course, while professing to be anti-Israel and anti-Jewish, deepens the problems of anti-Semitism on our campuses. It's anti-Semitism! Anti-Semitism! This is evidenced by incidents related to me, by faculty, colleagues, and my own experience. Recently, I witnessed physical exclusion from the encampment site through intimidation, harassment, and physical assault by the occupiers, also known as a protest. After speaking to people outside the enclosure, I attempted to enter through the well-guarded entrance, but was physically prevented from doing so, right? So, like a fucking protest movement. Like, they're not just going to let some creepy little fascist in there to look around so that they can narc to the cops, right? Are you clueless? Like, how stupid are you? They're not just going to allow some creepy, weird fascist into the encampment to have a look around so that they can go narc to the police, right? After speaking to people outside the enclosure, I attempted to enter through the well-guarded entrance, physically prevented. The person beside me was punched in the face. So it sounds like you incited violence, dude. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like you and a bunch of your fascist bully buddies tried to go where you weren't welcome, go where you didn't belong, because your white privilege tells you you're allowed to go wherever you want because your fucking settler colonial mindset tells you all land is your land, and that you incited violence and you fucked around and found out. That's what this sounds like. I heard chants of globalizing the Intifada and was told that Jews should go back to Europe. I mean... What one guy shouts one thing one time, and that's the whole thing. Signs glorifying the resistance, clearly referring to acts of October 7th, and Free Palestine from the River to the Sea, referring to ethnic cleansing of Jews from the Middle East, were prominent. I love this, right? Free Palestine from the River to the Sea means the ethnic cleansing of Jews, as opposed to defending themselves from an ethnic cleansing. It pays to remember that the National Post's official position on this is that there is no genocide, right? They're Nazis, right? The National Post is a Nazi outlet where fascists get published. That's what it is. Peaceful coexistence was absent from the rhetoric. I love it. We can go in there and ethnically cleanse them and cause a genocide, but they should be saying peace. That's what they should be doing, right? Like, what a creepy, weird little Nazi this guy is. Prior to the encampment, U of T announced that it would neither tolerate hate speech nor attempts to impede people's movements around campus. Now these forms of illegal activity are taking place openly. I just, isn't it so great? Why don't these people understand that they need to bend the knee to power like me? The fence erected to protect the King's College Circle grounds has been repurposed by protesters as a primary weapon for intimidation and exclusion of those who do not support their agenda. Yeah, of ending a genocide. Just the creepy little Nazi, eh? Just such a weird, creepy little Nazi. This includes the vast majority of Jewish faculty and students whose belief in the Zionists, who believe that they have the right to ethnically cleanse a region and set up their own house there, right? It's the settler colonial mindset that this guy full scale believes, right? That if you fight back, you're the one that's wrong. Whether or not one agrees with this belief, which you do, obviously, you're getting published in the National Post. The encampment is decidedly and aggressively discriminatory to this community within the University of Toronto. Yeah, dude. They're decidedly and aggressively discriminatory to ethnic cleansing. Correct. Correct. Why are you not decidedly and aggressively discriminatory to ethnic cleansing? Why do you think ethnic cleansing is fine? Why aren't you bringing up that hey, did you know the ICC is thinking about issuing arrest warrants for Netanyahu over his ethnic cleansing? And you're writing an article about how people are protesting it. People are grumpy that we're doing a genocide and they should stop. U of T has abandoned its promise, says the Nazi. The disobedience is not civil. I am the decider of what is or is not civil as a defender of genocide. The demonstrators controlling access to university property are masked, as are, because weird, creepy little Nazis like you want to take pictures of them and give them to the cops. Right? That's your job in all this, dude. That's what we know you do. As are many of the protesters around the site, avoiding accountability. That's right, not defending themselves and their families from people like you, for their hateful and illegal activity. Unfortunately, U of T has permitted these operatives to occupy a public central campus space, right, because the U of T understands that they're fighting Nazis, right, like you. Establish prejudice criteria for entering that space and enforce them with aggressive and intimidating means. In the recent past, U of T has acknowledged that anti-Semitism is a serious problem on our campuses. You know what? Homicidal tendencies, I'm kind of sick and tired of you. I'm just going to put you in timeout for 24 hours. Like, the ICC issuing arrest warrants is extremely important, and if you say it again, I'm just going to ban you permanently. Fuck off. In the recent past, the U of T has acknowledged that anti-Semitism is a serious problem on our campus and has promised to respond to it as firmly as it would like to any other bigotry. Its tepid response to the encampment marks a failure to live up to this commitment. That's right. The commitment of fighting back against people who are fighting against ethnic cleansing. As hateful and intimidating conduct directed towards a large proportion of Jewish faculty and students continues unimpeded, it is clear that this is now being tolerated on our campus. U of T's wish to avoid confrontation seemingly outweighs its inclusive policies, including its explicit commitment to protecting its Jewish members from hate. This would not be tolerated from any other group. Yeah, because every other group is not committing an ethnic cleansing. Right? Like, you get that, right? Like, every other group is not actually working on, what do they mean, illegal encampment? I mean, it's just, the message is clear. People on campus, not only Jews, have learned that hate speech, intimidation, and bullying prevails over constructive debate. What the fuck are you talking about, bud? The reason why there is a protest is because there is no constructive debate. You understand? Because Nazis like you think that they're adding to the discourse when all they're doing is denying the existence of the genocide, pretending like that's not happening, pretending like the ICC rulings don't matter, like homicidal tendencies does, right? Which is essentially genocide apologetics. Pretending is like us fighting back along these many lines is itself illegitimate. Right? And that we shouldn't celebrate the victories that we can get a hold of or use them as ammo in our conversations. The message is clear. The University of Toronto, a bastion of high academic ideals for which I have been proud to serve, obviously not, is currently not safe space physically, intellectually, or emotionally. Like, take a look at the pictures of Gaza right now, mate. What's not a safe space right now, do you think? A bunch of kids surrounded by fences at the University of Toronto, or literally bombed out cities. Like literally 30,000, 40,000 people dead in a genocide. Starvation, famine everywhere. Which one of these two do you think is actually unsafe? Which one of these two do you think we should actually take more seriously? By not acting, the U of T is choosing in favor of the purveyors of hate, people fighting back against genocide or purveyors of hate, intimidation, people fighting back against genocide or intimidating, and silencing of free speech. You're literally publishing a genocide apologetics article right now, my man, in one of the largest newspapers in Canada. Funded by corporatists and Nazis. Empowering others who wish to promote their hateful agenda of ending a genocide in Gaza by trespassing on university-protected property and intimidating those who do not agree. Okay, I was sort of expecting more from the National Post, honestly. They're just going straight for denialism. Like, that's their whole angle, right? Just deny that there's a genocide, and by denying the genocide, you can frame the fight against that genocide as itself a genocide, right? It's just nonsense. Like, it's baby babble. Like, at least the first guy was attempting to make a point. right? And attempting to actually find a way to through. His sin was denying the importance of expecting a response from power, and hyper-focusing on how we should deal with protesters. That protesters are disruptive to me, and I don't like them. There comes a point when we should clean them out, so says the liberal in the conversation, as opposed to saying protesters should be responded to by the leadership, and if the leadership is not responding to them, then we should look at the leadership and ask them why that's the case, right? That's obviously how this should actually work, and what the populace should actually expect. But nope, instead, we got to demonize protesters, and we should all get on board with that for some reason. But this guy's just outright saying in front of all of us, ignore the genocide completely. Just ignore the genocide completely. Don't even mention it. Not once did he even mention that there's a genocide happening. Not once. It's just ridiculous. Yep, I think Vifro is hitting it really hard over here. Even if Netanyahu is never arrested, he won't be arrested, obviously. The ICC rulings are for posterity. They go toward preserving the history of what is happening now. Because Palestinians won't have memorials or museums. There won't be holidays like we have in Holocaust museums, national days of remembrance, and mandated school curriculums teaching of the Holocaust. Yeah, and for posterity in the historical record. Right? When we say things like being on the right side of history, we're talking about the ICC ruling. That's what we're talking about. And so to come in and make fun of it, fuck yourself. Get the fuck out of here. It's annoying. So, moving off. President of Burkina Faso, right? So Burkina Faso recently had a coup. Here's the coup leader, right? They're decolonizing. They're getting rid of the French, who have been their colonial owners for a long time. France is not happy about it. Ibrahim Traore reduces minister and politician salary by 30%. He increases workers' salaries by 50% and refuses to accept a presidential salary. Can you imagine this happening in the West? Can you imagine any Western politician anywhere at any level, anywhere, actually saying, you know what we should do? You know what we should actually do? We should take a pay cut, 30% pay cut. I, the leader, am not even going to take a presidential salary. And we're going to increase the salaries of the working class, that's you, by 50%. How much longer do you think until some French coup attempt assassinates this guy? Like, how much longer do you think? Yeah. Traore is actually behaving in an exemplary way to deal with the CIA. Yeah. Politicians should be paid minimum wage. Yeah. I think that there's a fine debate to be had about, like, we should 100% be tying the minimum wage to things like inflation. We should 100% be tying the minimum wage to a standard of living. That politicians' wage and the minimum wage should be somehow intrinsically linked. Like, it's Egg Z, actually, with a strong point here from the previous conversation. Interesting how these people didn't make such a huge issue about anti-Semitism during the alt-right's heyday 8 years ago. Yeah. When the alt-right was literally standing up and saying, like, death to Jews, we're supposed to... Yeah, it's the people who are fighting against a genocide created by Zionists that are anti-Semites. That's right. I begin taking estrogen in 6 days? What's that, June? If they were paid a minimum wage, things would grow quickly. Yeah, one would think. One would think. So, I think it's important to try to contextualize what's going on in the world. If you ever see a report that talks about any form of theft other than wage theft, you literally just get to say out loud, that's fucking embarrassing. I should have done this already, guys. I'm a professional. We here at the Canadian Commie are very professional people. We understand how to do things. We know how to do stuff. Wage theft now outnumbers all other types of theft in the U.S., reaching $482 million. More than 100 times the amount stolen in robberies. So all of those hysterical reports that we heard a little while ago about theft in Walmarts, Walmart theft, what a huge problem, all this theft from Walmart. Well, it turns out that wage theft overrides that by a factor of 100 times. For every time somebody steals if somebody steals $1 from Walmart, Walmart steals $100 from them. Wage theft eclipses all other theft crimes in the United States. A staggering revelation has come to light. Wage theft, the illegal practice of employers failing to pay workers their rightful wages, has surpassed all other forms of theft in the United States. In 2019, wage theft amounted to a staggering $482 million, dwarfing the mere $4.8 million lost to robberies that year, a difference of over 100 times. This alarming statistic shines a spotlight on the widespread exploitation of workers, particularly those in low-wage industries and vulnerable communities. Wage theft takes many forms, including paying less than the minimum wage, denying overtime pay, forcing employees to work off the clock, and misclassifying workers as independent contractors to avoid providing benefits. Here's my wage theft story. I was working for a funeral home. I was driving around picking up the dead. I would go into hospitals, I would go to suicide sites, I would go to street corners, I would go wherever a dead body was and pick that dead body up and bring it back to the funeral home. Well, the funeral home was parked with a tiny little postage stamp back alley, and we had these big lumbering vans that he expected us to get into the garage by going like me, like 58 times. And everybody dang up these vans because the van was bigger than the alleyway, and and we had to maneuver them into this ridiculous place. And so of course I ended up dinging my van one time, like everybody did, and he tried to take the money away from me, which is a crime, is illegal, by the way. Wouldn't even matter if it was a big open space, right? I'm only in that situation because of him. And I'm the one doing the job and he's not. So I didn't let him steal from me. And he fired me for it. Incidentally, I was paid $1 over minimum wage to pick up the dead. So when your grandma dies, understand that the people who are coming to pick her up are paid $1 over minimum. If that. Successful society, definitely working. Definitely a working, successful society. The alarming statistic shines a spotlight on the widespread exploitation of workers, it's particularly those in low-wage industries and vulnerable communities. Wage theft takes many forms, including paying less than the minimum wage, denying overtime pay, forcing employees to work off the clock, and misclassifying workers as independent contractors to avoid providing benefits. The consequences of wage theft are devastating for workers and their families. When employers fail to pay legal mandated wages, it directly impacts the ability of employees to afford basic necessities like food, housing, and health care. The injustice perpetuates the cycle of poverty and exacerbates income inequality. Despite the staggering scale of wage theft, it often goes unreported and unpunished. Many workers fear retaliation from their employers or lack the resources to navigate the complex legal system. As a result, only a fraction of stolen wages are ever recovered, leaving employers emboldened to continue their exploitive practices. But even worse than this, I wonder if they're actually going to actually point this out. If you do take it to court, if you do push it, the worst thing the court is going to make the thief do is pay the wages they stole. Like, there's no extra anything. So if I steal $1,000 from you as an employer, and you as the employee go, hey, you stole $1,000 from me, I'm going to pursue court fees, I'm going to fill out all this paperwork, I'm going to take all this time, I'm going to take out all this effort, and I'm going to take you to court. And it stands in front of the court, and the court goes, yep, you stole those wages, slam, pay $1,000. That's the worst thing that can happen to him. So always steal from your workers, 100% of the time. The worst thing that can happen is that you'll have to pay it back. There's no jail time. There's no fine associated with it. It's literally steal as much as you possibly can 100% of the time. And if your employee puts up a big enough fuss, just give them their money back and fire them. Like, that's how the system actually works. The need to strengthen workers' rights in the United States. Here's my favorite part of these articles right here. As if the system in America is actually going to respond rationally. So here's the liberals standing up and being like, here are the policies that we absolutely need to support that will not ever happen because the system of capital has been cooed by corporate power. Right? And that both Trump and Biden work for the same people, and that the system is no longer responding to us. But let's cosplay for a minute. Let's all pretend for a minute. Let's all pretend for a minute that it does respond to the people. So if it did respond to the people, let's pretend. Here are the things that we could do if the system responded to us. In 2019, 8,500 U.S. employees committed wage theft, robbing workers of $287 million in wages and overtime pay. Wage theft now outnumbers all other types of theft in the U.S. Workers are deprived of an estimated $19 billion in unpaid overtime pay every year. Among 4,387 low-wage workers surveyed across Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York, 68% reported experiencing at least one wage violation. 26% of workers were paid less than the legally required minimum wage. 78% were not paid the legally required overtime rate. Like, and just on and on it goes. Only 1 in 4 repeat wage theft offenders get fined, despite violating federal wage laws more than once. Just steal as much as possible, dude. Like, if you're this guy, just commit as much fraud and theft as you possibly can. You'll never be punished for it. The prevalence of wage theft is a stark reminder of the need for stronger enforcement of labor laws. That's definitely going to happen. And increased protections for workers. All we got to do is write a letter, you guys. Vote blue. It is a moral imperative for policymakers, labor advocates, and the public to prioritize this issue and hold employers accountable for their illegal actions. Wage theft is not just a financial crime, it is a violation of the fundamental rights and dignity of workers. Until this epidemic is addressed, the promise to a fair and just workplace will remain elusive for millions of Americans. Yeah, until you actually have a revolution, until you actually shut these places down with big sit-in strikes and with big boycotts, fuck all is going to happen, right? These people are psychos, right? I say it all the time on this channel, over and over and over again, right? These people are psychopaths. They're not suddenly going to be like, oh, goodness, dearie me, we need to stop stealing from our employees. What are you talking about? It's like the backbone of their whole thing. Like, it's their whole principle. And their responses to it are literally things like, well, if you don't want us to steal from you, then you better find a better job. Walmart comes in, destroys all the jobs in the area, starts stealing from everybody, pays everybody less than minimum wage. Worst thing that can happen is they'll have to pay out a couple of fines. What a joke this whole country is. It deserves to collapse. Like, it really does. Like, America deserves the coming collapses that it's going to experience. It absolutely deserves it. Because we're not even trying. Like, we're not even trying. Like we're making no attempt whatsoever to rectify this situation. We're literally starting from absolutely scratch in order to even begin with the premise and the promise of, hey, maybe we should live in a rational society that actually gives a shit about itself, right? We're literally starting at zero, and the society's not going to survive it, right? Like, the society's just not going to survive it. Meanwhile, another form of theft, right, outside of wage theft, the other form of theft, Canadians feel grocery inflation getting worse. 18% are boycotting Loblaw. Almost 2/3 of Canadians feel that inflation at the grocery store is getting worse. A new poll suggests, even as food inflation has been steadily cooling. I love how they fraudulently report this, right? The media is so in bed with corporate masters. So inflation goes like this. and then it plateaus and it goes like this, and they call it cooling, right? So I said this a year ago that they were going to do this to us. They're going to do this with housing prices. They're going to do this with inflation. They're going to do this. They're going to say that, oh, it's plateauing. We raised prices 40%, right? It's actually like 20%. We raised prices 20%, right? So you're paying 20% more for eggs. You're paying 20% more for everything. And then we're just going to let that plateau. And then we're going to say, look, everything's fine. It cooled. Everything's fine. Look at how it cooled. It's normal now. It's fine. You're paying 20% more, by the way. We raised your taxes 20%. We raised your taxes on food 20%. Like, it really is time for us to begin talking about these things, because they've given them a bunch of different words, right? That it's inflation, right? Raising prices. It's government taxation, right? Rent. Well, they're all taxes. They're all taxes. Your taxes went up. Your taxes went up 20%, and then they stopped raising the taxes, and they're saying it cooled. Inflation cooled because it was a totally normal, natural phenomenon. It wasn't just the grocery stores raising your taxes. That's not what that was, right? Yeah, when people act like inflation is just some organic, obligatory property of the universe. Yeah, it's just private owners raising your taxes. Right? Like when your landlord raises your rent, he's increasing your taxes. It's your lord increasing your taxes. That's what it is. That's why, incidentally, I've actually I've actually really turned the corner pretty hard, actually, on Jordan Peterson. I'm going to go on a Jordan Peterson rant again. Right, because this guy for some reason still has truck amongst the Nazis in our country. The reason why Jordan Peterson is so despicable and reprehensible as a figure is that he refuses to acknowledge that the populace is undergoing undue burdensome taxation. Right, that rent has gone up. Right, rent, inflation, government taxation. All of these have gone up. Right? All of these have gone up. We're paying increased rent. We're paying increased prices through inflation. And all of these are taxes. These are taxes we are paying to the corporate ownership class that cooed our government. We're literally like being taxed by Prince John. Prince John is in control, and he's jacking our taxes and jacking our taxes and jacking our taxes. And he's got a weird little Nazi propagandist over here who's saying, just buck up. You got to clean up your room and stand up straight with your shoulders back. You can do it. Take risks and be dangerous and do all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, the populace is undergoing a vast increase of their taxes through rent, inflation, and government taxation. And we're all pretending like that's just a natural norm. It's like the hand of God. It's like the hand of Jesus Christ came in and said, oh, it looks like the force of nature that is capitalism. So I said it has to make prices go up so that Mark Zuckerberg can get a bigger yacht and buy a bigger bunker in the underground thing. Oh, Jeff Bezos hasn't been able to shoot himself up into space recently, so he's got to raise taxes. Inflation. Like, what are we, stupid? Like, what are we, fucking stupid? They're just raising our taxes, and they're calling it rent. Like, is this really all it took? Is this really all it took to bamboozle the entire populace? No, it's not taxes. It's, what? Rent? Does that work? Rent? And we all went, well, I guess rent. That's not taxes. Yeah, rent is fine. What? Like, what? Like, we are this stupid. Yeah, I worked at a Walmart. My coworker was trying for a union. Another worker snitched, and he was let go. Imagine being the snitching worker. Who's that pathetic loser? Right? Like, that's the thing that always baffles me the most. Right? That there are actually snitching workers. And they're like sitting there being like, and then I'll get a reward. And then they get a pay cut. It's like unbelievable. XZX Raptor, good to see you. over on Twitch. Ugh. So the reason why Jordan Peterson is so despicable is that he's a gaslighter because he refuses to acknowledge the reality of the situation, pretends as though everything that's happening is completely normal and that it's a you problem. Dave writes, I've read an article online saying that they've noticed a decline in the workforce from men, and the numbers are more higher than before the pandemic. A decline in the workforce from men? Look, I don't know why anybody is trying to work. Like, for real. Outside of getting your rent paid, like paying your taxes, like, once you have your taxes paid, don't do anything else. Like, only do things for your own personal benefit. Like, if you feel that you are working for an establishment that you can, basically tolerate, and that you're getting your bills paid, and then you get a little bit extra so that you can, like, have a nice life, right? So that you can go to a restaurant or something, so that you can go out sometimes, watch a movie or whatever, right? Do that. Don't put literally zero more effort into this psychopath system, because the psychopath system is going to destroy you. Like, it's trying to. It's actively attempting to. See the picture in front of you? Accurate. Right? We're literally destroying the planet so that we can fill a vault with money that we ourselves are responsible for printing. Like, our society is fundamentally stupid. Like, on a deep fundamental level, we are deeply stupid. Because we have supplanted the capacity to have rational thinking and rational thought, and making decisions based on evidence with a religious ideology. And that religious ideology says, destroy the planet, destroy breathable air, workable land, communities, destroy everything to get pieces of paper that we ourselves are responsible for printing. That's what we're doing. Like literally, that's what we're doing. And we're told by the people at the very top of the chain that this is the best system and it's natural and it's innate, which is a hilarious thing to say considering it took 100,000 years of human development for it to show up. Supernatural, right? Like that's what I think when I think nature. When I think nature, I think it takes 100,000 years for humanity to actually do a thing. And then in the brief period of time that it has existed, it's committed a genocide against the First Nations people, ethnically cleansed 2 continents worth of people, filled with like dozens of civilizations, stole all their resources, enslaved another continent worth of people, shipped them over to the other continents that we were ethnically cleansing. And that's the beginning, right? And forget about getting into the Civil War and World War II, the nuclear bombs and all this kind of crazy shit, right? And then people have the absolute audacity to stand in front of me and be like, capitalism's actually pretty good when you think about it. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. We're ruled by dimwits. Yeah. I want to work because I love my clients and I want to help. The bureaucracy is what makes my job difficult. Yeah, I'm trying to return to work. Yeah. Look, people want to work. Like, this is the thing that's so fucked up about the whole thing, is that we don't want to work for psychopaths, right? But the psychopaths are the ones that are in charge. So when we say, hey, I don't want to work for psychopaths, they say, then you're lazy. No, people want to work, right? They just want to go to work for places that are going to, A, treat them well, and B, that they feel are actually going to contribute to a meaningful community, right? Like, I don't want to work for some shithole place that's just exploiting people. I don't want to work for a place that's like overseeing slavery. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm not going to do that. And if somebody's going to tell me, well, then that makes you lazy, then I think you're a psychopath. Like, fuck off. It's just embarrassing. But this isn't a highly embarrassing society that should absolutely be relegated to the dustbin of history. But it's not going to work that way, right? Because the psychopaths that run this place are going to nuke the place before they lose any power. Ugh. This fucking inflation article. Oh, it cooled. Look, inflation's cooling. Sure, we raised your taxes 20%, but it's cooling. A new Ledger survey found that almost 30% of Canadians believe food inflation has been primarily caused by grocery stores trying to increase profit margin. So, a new Ledger survey found that almost 30% of Canadians believe reality exists and that food inflation has been primarily caused by grocery stores trying to increase its profit margins. You know, the thing that's actually real. You know, reality. Another 26% think it's mostly due to global economic factors. While 1 in 5 blame the federal government. It's the government! Forget about who owns the government. Like, these people who scream their heads off about how it's the government are literally just like, they think the government is a monster. They think the government is a beast. That it's a creature. And that nobody owns it. And that there isn't, like, capitalist power that has infected it. Like, it's just. What we need to do is get rid of the government. And then when we get rid of the government, everything will be fine, because corporations certainly won't exploit us. What we need to do is get rid of the only edifice and only institution that technically does have the capacity to fight back against corporate power, and then corporate power will treat us nicely. That's the libertarian argument. GFRO, or VFRO rather, you had such a strong comment, the last comment. The threat of violence used to keep sociopaths and psychopaths in check, or even cull them from the population. The problem now is that within our current system, money equates more and easier life, and policing and militaries who also need to be paid protect money, and sociopaths who steal and exploit make the most money. So police and military protect them to be paid. Yeah, it's a creepy little incestuous little circle, right? And the amount of people that are going to be permitted into the project of prosperity is going to get smaller. And it's going to get smaller based on the lines that you just pointed out. That it's going to be police and military personnel, and then the people at the top of corporate power. And of course, the threat to the people at the top of corporate power is that once the ring gets small enough and tight enough, the police and military will begin to wonder why they're listening to these guys, right? Which happens in history, right? So that's how the samurai rose to power in Japan. That the circle of prosperity got so small, and that the weaselly imperialists, the losers, right, the monarchs and the kings at the top of the thing, who were pathetic and did nothing important at all and were just whiny children, really, as they all turn out to be. The samurai, the police of that day, basically looked at them and said, "Why are we listening to you? What do you do exactly? You're just a crying baby on top of a big pile of money. Oh, we should just get rid of you." And they did. Right? I expect to see the same thing happen in America. Maybe not in all of America, right? Maybe not the totality of everything that is America. Like, America's a huge place. But definitely that will happen in certain places, right? Where the police will basically just walk to the mayor or the governor, or whoever is like the billionaire in that place, and essentially say, "Why do we keep listening to you? Why are we interested in what you have to say even? You're so stupid and incompetent." And they'll just depose them and take their money and use it. Yeah, it happened with knights in medieval Europe. Yeah, the Templars, and also the Mamelukes in the Middle East all rose to challenge corrupt oligarchies. Yep. Well, but that's the irony, right? Like, that's the irony of systems of wealth, is that systems of wealth require violence in order to maintain themselves and succeed. But the systems, but the people who are benefiting from being at the top of these systems of violence are so corrupt and incompetent that eventually the military personnel go, "We need to get rid of you." You can see a very clear example of this happening right now in Burkina Faso. That's exactly what happened in Burkina Faso. That members of the military finally said, "Why are we giving anything to the French? Why? These people are stupid, incompetent, pathetic, and do nothing for our society. We should get rid of them. And they did. And here you are. Right? So it's common. And it's going to happen in America. Right? Right now they're building these cop cities. They're building these huge military bases in each state right now. The most popularized one is the one that's happening in Georgia. There's major protests still going on about the one that's in Georgia right now. And I actually think that the one that's in Georgia is actually going to be really, really crucial as climate change ravages the coasts, right? And makes Florida unlivable, right? So let's just do it. Let's just pull up the map. Map. It's time for the map. Right? Like, Florida is going to become unlivable. And it's probably going to be one of the first places in America that will become unlivable. Like Miami, you're not going to be able to live in Miami. Jacksonville, you're not going to be able to live in Jacksonville. Tampa, you're not going to be able to live in Tampa. Orlando, maybe will be a holdout for a little bit of time. But all of these people are going to influx to Orlando. No, where they're going to leave. Where are they going to go? Atlanta. Real straightforward, Atlanta, Georgia. They're going, right? This whole state is going to flee north to Georgia. And the government of Georgia knows it, right? The federal government knows it. Like, everybody who's in a position knows it. They're just obvious frauds and losers, so they don't care to actually do anything about it. And so what are they doing? They're building a cop city. They're building a town for police, military personnel to rule from, basically. So that they can just go to Atlanta, go to Augusta, go to Savannah, Birmingham, just be like, boop, 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 boop. So you're going to have an external oppressive force essentially governing and ruling over Atlanta, Georgia. And eventually the cops are going to go, why are we listening to these politicians? And they're just going to throw them over. Right? Like has happened in history 1,000 times over. So and I expect to see that story play out in the United States a dozen times, right? Like, come on, like, what, you think you think Louisiana is going to still be habitable? What makes you think that Louisiana is still going to be habitable? I can't imagine believing that Louisiana is going to be a habitable place. All of these people are going to leave, right? Where are they going to go? Likely Texas. Right? And Texas is already like a police state as it is. So, like, it's like imagine a governor standing up to the police force and to the militias of Texas and saying anything that they didn't want to hear. Right? Like, I'm of the opinion that Texas is mainly already governed by the police and by its internal military forces. Right? Like, I'm basically of that opinion, that if Greg Abbott were to stand up and say something that they didn't like, then he wouldn't be there. Six Cat Sin says, would you debate Destiny? It wouldn't be a debate. Like, Destiny is a genocidal maniac who denies the existence of a genocide in Gaza, a place he can't locate on a map. All I'd really do is show clips of him being like, oh, here we are in Gaza. Look, it's Gaza. Oh, here we go. There's Gaza up here. And let's go to southern Gaza. Yeah, here we are in southern Gaza. Right? That great clip. Here's Gaza, by the way. Guy can't find the place on a map. Right? Is a genocidal maniac. An obvious Nazi. Right? Just like an obvious Nazi. His mother was literally a gusano. Like, his mom, there's a great clip that just recently circulated yet again, and is going to continue to circulate, where his mom was on his stream talking about how she was a little girl on the plantations under Batista, right? And that she fled from Cuba with her parents when Castro came to power and took away her slave plantation, which she knows is a slave plantation. So Destiny's a gusano. So it makes sense that he'd be a genocidal maniac, right? And he's just such a cucked loser. Like, his girlfriend literally is just cheating on him in front of him, and he's just like, well, I guess that we're trying. Like, Destiny's a fucking loser. I would not debate Destiny. I would say everything I just said and then be like, bye, continue being a creepy little Nazi, you fucking fascist weirdo. and leave. There's no reason to debate someone like this. He's not worth debating. You understand? He's a fraud. He's a loser. He's a genocidal maniac. He's a Nazi. And it's obvious, by the way, to anybody who steps outside of their weird little creepy Nazi bubble. Like, I've had conversations with Destiny bros where they've literally tried to deny the existence of the genocide to me, and I've just been like, you're a flat earther, why should I listen to anything you have to say? You're delusional, why should I listen to anything you have to say? That's basically the only question I would ask Destiny. Why should I listen to anything you have to say? You're demented. You're delusional. You're a loser. You obviously don't know anything about the subject, nor do you care to know anything about the subject. Why should I listen to anything you have to say about it? Do you consider anyone who supports Zionists? The word is Zionists. The word is Zionists, okay? You want to be really clear with your language here, okay? There is Israel, which exists as a state, right? And there are Israelis, i.e. people who live in Israel. Then there are Jews, right? Which the word Jew has like there's ethnic Jews, there's religious Jews, right? So there's Jews, people who practice Judaism, right? And then there is Zionists. And Zionists are Nazis. Nakedly. Like, just naked, open, they will tell you that they're Nazis. And their ideology is Nazism. It's a Jewish supremacy. They believe that they should ethnically cleanse the region so that they can have their Jewish state. Okay? So, if you're going to say, I don't want to see Israel experience a genocide, I'm going to be like, yeah, okay, that's not unreasonable. Like, you got to acknowledge the existence of the settler colonial state. You got to acknowledge that Israel was always a settler colonial project, right? If you want to remain intellectually credible, right? But I can respect and understand why somebody doesn't want to see Israel get ethnically cleansed, right? I don't want to see Gaza get ethnically cleansed, right? Like, it's a tricky situation. So I can respect that position, and we can have a conversation about that. And I also certainly think that people are like, well, you shouldn't be against Jews. Yeah, of course. Judaism is a world religion, right? The Jews have experienced lots of hardships from, do I have to get into it? Right? Do I have to get into the history of the Jewish purges throughout Germany? But the Zionists, fuck the Zionists. I hope every Zionist meets a grisly end at the end of the barrel of a gun. Fuck these Zionists. These people are Nazis. They are Nazis. I hope Netanyahu gets arrested and hung in public. I will show the video. Like, I think that Zionists are Nazis and deserve the same fate that Nazis experienced. Do you believe in one state or two state? So, look, there's what I believe, and then there's what is real, right? The concept of a two-state solution is over. Like, nice idea, right? Maybe that would have worked in the 90s, right? That's over now. There's no such thing as a two-state solution anymore. That cannot happen. And the reason why it cannot happen is very, very obvious. Israel just ethnically cleansed Gaza. Like, straight up, this is all rubble. Gaza was, and they even have pictures of it still. Look, this is what it used to look like, right? This is what it used to look like, right? They haven't updated any of their photos, right? This is what it used to look like, right? You want to see pictures of Gaza? Here's what Gaza used to look like, right? Largest open-air concentration camp. You can watch the film Gaza Fights for Freedom by Abby Martin, which is a masterpiece. It's pre-October 7th. And tells you the entire history of what happened and how Gaza came to be and the ethnic cleansing and the settler colonial regime, right? The settler colonial regime that took place there. And the up until the modern era. And perhaps a two-state solution could have been negotiated in like 2000, even 2000, like 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, right? maybe even 2020, you could have negotiated a two-state settlement. That's over now. No way. 0% chance that's going to happen, right? The Israelis have shown, the Zionists have shown very clearly that their intention is to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians, right? They're going to do that whether Palestine is a state or not. They're going to do that whether or not this little border is a dotted border or a hard black line border. They're going to do that whether this line is a dotted line or a hard black line. They're going to do that. Their whole principle is to ethnically cleanse Palestinians from this. Right? The line from the river to the sea was originally stated by the Israelis. That the Israelis will own this country of Palestine from the river to the sea. That's the reason why the Palestinians say it. And so the idea that we're supposed to listen to creepy, weird little Nazis in the National Post say that from the river to the sea is actually a genocide by the Palestinians to the Israelis is a joke. Because the history of that phrase was that the Israelis said it as a genocidal chant first, and it got claimed by the Palestinians in response. That it's like the N-word. They took it back. They took it back. And creepy white supremacist Nazis are upset about it. That's what's actually going on here. So there is no two-state solution. The solution that I see moving forward, given the dramaticness of all of this, the insanity of all of this, the only solution that I think would be acceptable at this point is a one-state solution, with the Palestinians being given equal rights to the Israelis. The Israelis will never go along with it because that would put them in the minority. They would lose power, significant power. And it's pretty likely that the Palestinians wouldn't look very happily on the ethnic cleansing regime that the Israelis have been putting on them for 80 years, right? I think that all of this ends in a catastrophe for Israel. Like, if you want my actual opinion about how this actually works, because what I support or do not support is irrelevant, right? I support the Israelis stopping an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. So what? Changes nothing. What's actually going to happen, right? So what's actually going to happen? Eventually, the United States is going to pull its support out for Israel. That's not going to happen today, right? That's not going to happen tomorrow or next year or the year after. But eventually, America will get bored of this. Because that's how America rolls. And America will pull out of it. Just like they did in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Korea. Just like they pulled out of Afghanistan, right? Just like they pull out of all types of regions and leave the leadership and the people there in the lurch. They've done it over and 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 over again. They'll do it to Israel too. That eventually America pulls out of Israel, and that means that Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, Turkey, Syria, Jordan are all going to turn and they're all going to take a look at Israel. Lebanon. You know, all of the nations that hate the shit out of Israel. I don't think Israel survives. I think Israel has antagonized everybody on the planet. I think Israel has antagonized the entire world. And when the United States has to finally turn its eye inward to deal with the apocalypse of its own creation, let alone the climate change disaster that's going to befall it, when that starts to happen, America is not going to keep its eye on Israel. It's going to turn inward and have to deal with its own civil war and its own civil conflicts and its own destructive policies. And it's not even going to have the capacity or the military personnel to be able to do these things anymore. Israel's fucked. Like, Israel's fucked. And to me, it's only a matter of time. Whether it happens in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 150 years, 200 years, Israel's fucked. Like, it's going to get completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. And this isn't me saying this gleefully. I'm not sitting here being like, haha, take that, Israel. It's just an inevitability. There's literally no way Israel continues to maintain its position of power in this region. Because its position of power is completely contingent on this psychopath This just absolute erratic, unpredictable nightmare creature that is absolutely going to abandon it the second it doesn't feel like it needs it anymore. And as soon as the United States recognizes that it can no longer influence this region militarily anyway, then it's no longer going to continue supporting Israel. And that'll just be the end of it. That's what I expect to see. Haley writes, when you read this comment, I have ordered a complete siege on Gaza. Hold on. Comments went down. Yeah, this is from Gallant, isn't it? Yeah. I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we act accordingly. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Yeah, what's so embarrassing about these Nazis and like Gusano's like Destiny is that they'll deny the existence of a genocide while there are quotes like this, but then uphold like the Nazi rhetoric surrounding the Holodomor, or really whinge about the Great Leap Forward with like no quotes, no information, no nothing. It's just regurgitating Nazi propaganda. It's just unbelievable. 6 continues, if you don't believe in a two-state solution, do you acknowledge there's no conceivable way for Palestinian fighters to reclaim Israel? No, I think Palestine reclaims Israel. I look, dude, this is not well understood in the West because we don't understand the concept of solidarity, right? Like, in the West, it's every man for themselves. We worship ourselves, we worship money, and we worship chaos. We're not interested in ideas like solidarity. We're not interested in helping one another based on mutual aid or any of that kind of stuff. We don't have a shared, like, principle. We don't have anything. The principle that we share as Westerners is lie, cheat, steal, get all the money you possibly can for yourself. That's our shared principle, which is why our civilization is decaying. Across the Middle East, Islam is a very powerful force across the Middle East. Muslims have solidarity with one another as Muslims. Oh, you're a Muslim? Oh, wonderful. That means that you have this kind of right and you think this kind of way and you're going to do this kind of... Oh, something bad is happening to you as a Muslim? Well, I'm going to stand up in solidarity for you. We see that from the Yemeni. The Yemeni's blockade, that's still happening, by the way, that's still going on. The Yemeni's blockade that is still happening is 100% based on these principles of solidarity. The Muslim world despises these Zionists. They despise them. And that the moment the Muslim world is able to put the Palestinians back into power in Palestine and change this label from Israel to Palestine, they will do it. And they will consider it a massive cultural success. Like, I just don't think you understand the scale of this. I just don't think you understand how deep down this fucking rabbit hole we've gotten. I don't think you understand how deep in the shit these Zionists actually are. And I don't think you understand how deep in the shit these Westerners actually are. That the destruction of Israel and the reinstatement of a Palestinian country would be considered the highest honor in the Muslim world. They would all consider that a major and massive, enormous success. Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Sudan, Libya, Chad, Ethiopia, Somalia will all join forces to destroy Israel if they think they can. And there will come a moment when they will, and they can. And when they do it, they will all stand up and say, "Glory be to Allah." And they will change this name from Israel to Palestine, and they will ethnically cleanse Israel of all the Jews that live there. I promise you this is what is going to happen, because this is the script Israel has written for itself by trusting this fucking psychopath. Do not trust America. If there is one rule in international politics, it is do not trust America. They will tell you to your face not to trust us. They said it many times. They continuously say it to Russia. That Russia understood that there was a no encroachment policy after World War II, that NATO encroachment shouldn't happen, but they did it anyway. And you know what the response was from America? Yeah, you shouldn't have trusted us. You think the world doesn't hear that? You think the world doesn't see this? You think the world just goes, yeah, you shouldn't have trusted America? Or do you think they actually go, yeah, that's fucking fucked up. Yeah, don't trust America. And so the time will come when America will abandon Israel, because that's what America does. It's done historically. That's all it's ever done. And the surrounding nations, the Muslim Brotherhood, will wipe it out. That's the future for Israel. Is it a future that's avoidable? I think so. I think they could avoid it. It's going to require some major movements and some major realizations and some major shifts in the way things are done in Israel, but it's possible. Do I think it's likely? No, but it's possible. Yeah, it's a bold claim. Since Israel's inception, the quote unquote ironclad support. Go read up on the Vietnam War. Go read up on the Vietnam War. Go take a look at the Ukraine War. Like literally go take a look at Afghanistan. Ironclad support. The United States always gives ironclad support right up until the day it pulls out. Like, the reason why it supports Israel, no other reason, is because Israel is the perfect lily pad. It's the perfect place for the United States to influence this region, right? To bomb other nations and coup other nations and generally be a Nazi force in the region, right? It's geopolitically perfect because it creates a barrier, right? This is Africa. This is the Middle East. Here is Israel, creating a block right on the land bridge between these two. It isolates the Middle East from Africa. So it's politically extremely important if your goal is to dominate and destroy everything. It doesn't, and it's also messing right now with the Chinese. That the Chinese are trying to get a rail through here, right? And they're going to great lengths to get a rail through here. They're making a really cool project with Saudi Arabia called NEOM, where they're literally going to put a big rail system right under here, right? They're not announcing that, of course, but that's obviously what they're doing to anybody that's got a brain in their head. They're building a big, giant vertical city that goes straight in a line right on the coast of the Gulf of Aqaba and then running a rail from China to it. They're trying to get around Israel, right? Because historically, Israel's been the problem. So it's been brilliant for those reasons, right? But we've already seen that they're starting to pull out of Afghanistan. We've already seen that they've started pulling out of Iraq. We've already seen that they literally cannot beat the Houthis. Like, America cannot beat a ragtag band of rebels that are launching a blockade on the Israelis, right? This blockade, by the way, has decreased the value of Israeli trade by as much as 40%. Like, it's a disaster for Israel. But there just comes a point where the United States' internal contradictions and its internal problems and its internal difficulties are going to overwhelm its senses. It's going to overwhelm it. They're literally not going to be able to pay for these military bases anymore. The military personnel that is in these bases will stop receiving pay. Like, I just don't think you understand the scale of how this is actually going to go. And the inevitability of the abandonment of the Israelis is like written in the stars. Like, it's what the United States does. It always has done it. It will continue to do it. That eventually the United States will look out into the world and go, you know what? We got our own problems to deal with. We're going to deal with them. Well, good luck, Israel, and they'll fuck off. Why is it that countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan, seemingly anti-Palestine, Egypt and Jordan both deny taking in civilian refugees? If you attribute it all to the West, it seems unlikely we would have to cut ties with all these countries because they know what's good for them. Like, Jordan is these countries are comparatively weak, right? Like Israel acts like a bully because it's got the United States funneling billions of dollars in arms and everything into it, right? Comparatively, like Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt are weak, right? Like Egypt literally experienced a coup in 2008. The actual story, my bad, is that Egypt elected a Muslim Brotherhood leader into its leadership. It held an election. The Muslim Brotherhood won. The United States government couped them. Like, Egypt doesn't have any power. Like, they're making decisions based on, yes, America. Yeah, of course, America. No, we won't do that, America. Of course, please don't bomb us. Right? They're not making decisions currently based on they're not making decisions based on, like, we have to help the Palestinians in the plight of the... They're trying to survive. Yeah, those countries literally have puppet governments. There's also that, right? Like, the United States coups their government. Of course they're pro-United States. Do you like Trudeau? No, of course not. Trudeau is just a foppy fraud, right? Like, he's just the face of capital. He's just like a pretty boy face with a name of a popular political leader who came into power in order to manage the decline of Western capital. That's why he's here. That for like 10 years we've basically had to put up with a bunch of people across Canada going, he's so dreamy. And that's it. That's Canadian politics. Oh, Sonny Ways, he's so dreamy. Oh, it's fine that I sell myself into wage slavery in a system of capital because my leader, he's so dreamy. Like, we're dumb. Like, we're not a smart people. You also dislike Pierre, I assume? Yeah, of course. But, like, no, I wouldn't prefer him over Trudeau. Look, you are getting caught. Okay, there's and this is common, so I don't get upset with people about this. I used to, but now I see how common it is and how normal it is. There's no such thing as politics in the West, right? There isn't. There's vanity projects that take on the appearance of politics. Pierre is going to operate exactly like Trudeau. They're going to operate exactly the same way because they are being elected into a position that is part of a system, and that system is structured to act in a certain way, and they are not going to stand up against that system. If they were trying to stand up against that system, they would be talking about that system, right? And that system is the system of global capital, the system of finance capital. That Justin Trudeau doesn't make decisions. He's not the leader of the country. Right? He's just elected into this position of prime minister, which technically could pass laws, but he does everything he's told by his capitalist owners. And so he is just a pawn of capital, and Pierre will be exactly the same. That figures like the Irving family, the Thompson family, Jim Pattison are far more important than Trudeau. Like, Trudeau's just some floppy loser weirdo, and Pierre will operate in exactly the same manner, right? And incidentally, it's gotta be no, but you gotta listen, okay? You gotta listen to this. Just because Pierre is going to come in and implement a couple of different policies doesn't mean anything. The Liberals and the Conservatives are allies. They work together, just like the Republicans and the Democrats are allies that work together, right? The Conservatives are the bad cop. The Liberals are the good cop. The good cop, which is the natural ruling leader of Canada, the Liberals, the good cop says, hey, let's have the system of capital be completely in charge. The system of capital is exactly what's in charge, right? We all acknowledge that. Capitalism's the best system in the world, right? but we acknowledge that we could use some slight modest reforms. So we're going to do reduce your tax, let's say, by 1% over 10 years. Or we'll put in a child care benefit of 1% over 10 years. Or we'll give you dental coverage of $100 every 5 years for 20 years, right? Just this tiny, almost insignificant piecemeal reformism that, of course, every time they do anything like that, they do something else to undercut that. So they'll raise taxes on Galen Weston by 1%, but then they'll buy him a bunch of fridges, right, to keep him in climate change accordance or environmental accordance, right? So literally, they'll have him pay them $1,000, and then they'll give him $10,000 back, and it's all just politicking with the public. The only politics that actually happens in capitalist countries is not between parties. It's between the capitalists and the workers, with the politicians acting as surrogates for the capitalists. That Trudeau and Pierre are allies. So once we get tired of Trudeau and his sunny ways and his piecemeal reformism that isn't actually reformism, that goes nowhere, that is a dead end, right? Because our housing's out of control, inflation's out of control. He's not actually leading the country. He's given up on the idea of Canada, just like the Americans have given up on the idea of America. And so we eventually get tired of him, and we all go, fuck Trudeau! And then we all vote Pierre, thinking, this'll do something different, I guess. And then Pierre comes in, and he's the bad cop, and he implements the policies that the capitalists would like to see implemented, but that Trudeau was not interested in implementing because it would mean that he would lose his own personal position and own personal power, right? Because it's a vanity project exclusively. He wants to be the prime minister. And so he is the good cop, giving concessions, giving these minor, insignificant piecemeal reforms. Well, at least they're not the conservatives. Until finally the populace gets tired of this, and then the capitalists bring in the bad cop. And then we usually get one term of the bad cop, right? Maybe more than one term if you get a minority government, blah, blah, blah. But it's usually one minority term because we all go, oh, shit, this is terrible. He's going to bring in austerity. He's going to lower everybody's wages to increase investment, right? Like he's going to follow the failed policies of financial capital. Right? He's going to focus on his religious ideology, the capitalist religious ideology that is a failed scientific idea. Financialization is a failed idea. It doesn't work. So he's going to bring that in, and he'll be the bad cop. We'll all eat shit, right? Everybody will be like, oh! And then what do? The same thing we've always done. Over and over and over and over again. We'll turn back to the good cop and be like, save us, good cop, from the bad cop. And the good cop will come in and be like, oh, my poor babies, are you experiencing the brutal, hard fascist hand of capital? Well, now it's time to experience the nice, lovely, silken palm of capital that'll give you a little pet. I'll give you a 0.2% increase on your wages over 10 years. The conservatives didn't do that, did they? Did they? No, they did not. No, they did not. Yes, my pretty bird, my pretty bird. And that's the relationship. That's how they manage us. That's how the system of capital manages us, right? That it's a show, it's performative, that for Pierre Poilievre, he has no vision, he is a venal idiot who only wants to be the prime minister because then he gets to wear the big boy pants. That's it. And when he takes power, he's going to do exactly what he's told. He's not going to deviate. Anytime his owners come in and say, his owners come in and say, we want this, he'll go, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. And he'll do it because he understands he's the bad cop, right? That maybe like one thing will get done that is of benefit to the public. Like Stephen Harper passed the childcare benefit, for example, right? That's like the one thing that he actually did that actually held as a legacy, which is hilarious because it's like, that's concessions. Like that's a concession. like you put something in that's a capital conceding to the public. Like that's what liberals do, right? But the austerity was too much to bear, right? So we all swung back to Sunny Ways Trudeau, who said, yeah, you know that plant that we all made illegal? It's not illegal anymore, although we're going to keep everybody in jail over it. But it's not illegal to ingest a plant. And we all went, yeah! Oh, by the way, electoral reform that I promised, no. Boo! And then he came out in blackface and like all this kind of stuff. The fact that Trudeau is still in power is like an indictment of the Conservative Party. Like, really. Trudeau should not be in power. Like, really clear. He should have resigned over the blackface scandal. Like, absolutely. He should have resigned over that. But we don't do real politics in this country, right? Our politics is not politics. It's management, right? That our politics is about managing the public. And the conservatives and the conservatives and the liberals are allies, and now the NDP, by the way, the NDP are also allies in this. And the only time they give concessions, or the only time they do anything that the public needs to do, is so that they themselves can maintain their own personal power. But now, like, Trudeau is tired of being the prime minister. By the way, like, his time is up, and he kind of knows it. Right, he just recently went through a divorce. Right, he's made $50 million while in power. When he leaves office, he'll go work for a fossil fuel company. Right, like that's how it's going to go for him. And then Pierre will take power, and every so often Trudeau will show up somewhere and be like, "Well, I think the Conservatives are not doing a good job because of this reason," and pretend like he's a politician when he's not. So the system of capital is managing us through these political parties. Electoral politics is to electoralism is to politics as the WWE is to sports. It's designed to look like it, or to be an echo of it, or to be a thing. But its real power comes from our interaction with it. That if it's not for the crowd watching wrestlers fight and cheering and jeering and all of this, it's two idiots staring at each other and then dancing. It looks stupid. Like, it really looks very stupid. At the beginning of the COVID period, they tried to do some wrestling without an audience. It was embarrassing. And it's the same thing with what we call politics. Like, it's not actually politics. It's management. How many characters do you have in your head? I feel like I'm listening to a radio play. High compliment, high praise, man. I have lots. I got this guy. This guy's the stupid guy that does the thing. I got Peterson, Jordan Peterson. You know, we all need to go out into the world and do the best that we can with what we've got, but I'm not going to pay any attention to the burdensome taxation of the populace. I got that guy. No, I know you're not complaining. I love doing it, right? Yeah, I don't know. I love doing voices. Voices are great. John, was the Dust Bowl famine of 1933 engineered by the government of Georgia Congressman Joe Steele to crush Texas nationalism? Bro, I have no idea. I think you're the one that's going to have to do the deep dive on that one, dude. That's my favorite, eh? We're all supposed to be like, communism had a famine and that discredits communism, but when capitalism has a famine, that happens. Like, it's just. Oh, here's my favorite voice. I haven't done this voice in a long, long time because I haven't really been talking about religion. When I get talking religion, this is the voice that I love to do. Here, I'll even say it while I say, now's a good opportunity. Now's a good opportunity to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bells and whistles. Tell Jesus that you love the Canadian commie. Be sure to reach into your pocket and pull out a crisp dollar bill and send it to the email you see below to continue empowering our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. God bless each and every one of you. I love that guy. Would you rather have dinner with Peterson or Gavin McInnes? I would stand both of them up. Oh, you know what? No, that's not true. I would show up and I would eat my food and I would leave and I wouldn't say a word to them. Gavin McInnes is a Nazi. He literally started the Proud Boys. And Peterson is like Nazi adjacent. I don't have anything to say to these frauds. Like, maybe when I stood up and stuck them with the bill and walked out, I would say, you're a fucking Nazi, and leave. I don't think they have anything interesting to say. I don't think they're credible people. I don't think they're interesting people. I think that they're stupid. Right? Like, they're deeply, deeply stupid. So, yeah, I feel like a lot of Peterson's general life advice is solid. Yeah, dude, clean up your room. Wow. Such inspiration. Like, Oprah said it, right? Like, the only reason why young white men think Peterson is a genius for saying this is because they didn't care when a black woman told them. Like, we all read The Secret, bro. Like, Peterson's not a genius. He read The Secret and went, I bet white men will respond to this. If I say it. Like, it's not a masterpiece, right? Like, it's literally something that's been done for like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Old white men shouting at young white men to clean up and stand up straight. It's nothing new. Like, it doesn't, like, I'll even go so far as to say this. Fine. Like, okay. So Peterson encourages people. I'll even tell you this. When I first encountered Peterson, it was as this. It was as somebody being like, you can do it. Things are difficult. You can do it. Right? And it was like, yeah, okay, I can do it. That's right. Let's go. Right? I have come to see now that he's a fraud, obviously, because he doesn't acknowledge the burdensome taxation that the populace is undergoing. And he sort of pretends as though that's irrelevant and doesn't matter. But, like, as somebody who's just like, you can do it. You can do it. Okay. But the minute he stops saying you can do it, he says things like, communists are evil. It's like, whoa, what's your reason for saying that, bro? Cultural Bolshevism! Sounds like a phrase that the Nazis used to say. Cool. So really, Peterson just proves to everybody that Nazis can still be inspirational. Like, Nazis can still stand up and say things that are like, you know, oh yeah, I'm inspired. Let's go do something. Right? Because if he can inspire you to go clean up your room and he can inspire you to, like, round up the Jews, right? That's what's so. Haley writes, Hitler did have insane riz. I love. There's an observation that was done by Norm Macdonald on this, where Norm Macdonald's like, I didn't really get Hitler. Everybody says he, oh well, he was so charismatic. He's so charismatic. And then I watch his speeches, and he's like, like, really? Charismatic? All right. Just Me says, let's found the Church of Communism. You preach, I'll hand out cans of soup. What do you think I'm doing right here? That's a joke, everybody. That's a joke. Here's a great poll. Dude, this poll is so fucking wild. If you had to resurrect one of these evil historical figures or end yourself, what choice? Most people choose Andrew Jackson, right? Forgetting that he, too, was also a genocidal maniac. Number 2 is end myself. So when given the choice between, like, resurrecting Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Andrew Jackson, Pol Pot, Hideko Tojo, or to commit suicide, most people say Andrew Jackson, and then the second choice, kill myself. Choice number 3, Adolf Hitler. Then choice number 4, Joseph Stalin. We're in a crisis. We're in a suicidal crisis. Like, the number 2 cause of death in my age group is suicide. This is a major crisis. And, just like school shootings, nobody gives a fuck. Here's another one that I wanted to point out. For those of you who don't know, new listeners perhaps, people who are just participating now, I am pro-Chinese. I think the Chinese Communist Party has done a fabulous job of managing its nation and dealing with Western imperialism. I can state my case more clearly if you would like to challenge me on that, but that's the position that I take. I don't take the position that China is where it is because of capitalism. I take the position that China is where it is in spite of capitalism, that it has had to negotiate with psychopathic capitalists for its entire existence, and it's doing so beautifully and brilliantly. The major success of China, in my view, is its complete understanding of the motivations of American. They really understand the American system. Like, they really understand the financial system of America, and they understand the theory that America is running on, and they manipulated it brilliantly for their own benefit, and really proved to everybody that America is economically illiterate and China is economically stable. That the theory of Marxism is correct and the theory of financialization is wrong, very clearly. Do you think China's people on average have a better standard of living than in the United States? I think that the standard of living in China is going up faster than the standard of living of those in the United States. And I think that's what really matters, right? That if you actually take the historical perspective, China was on the back foot for a long time. They experienced what was called the century of humiliation at the hands of American and British and, imperialism, colonialization, right? And Mao threw that off. The entire Maoist period, so that's all the way up to the 70s, was war, right? So they're not developing their standard of living through that period of time. They're fighting against imperialists and fighting war. And then it's only when China makes concessions to peace after the Vietnam War that they are able to begin the process of increasing their prosperity. So they begin increasing their prosperity from literally serf conditions. They begin the process of increasing their prosperity in the 70s. So like 72, 73, they begin that process. Whereas America had been increasing its prosperity since like the 1940s or 50s. They were the only country post-World War II that hadn't actually been reduced to rubble and destroyed. And that gave them a pretty significant head start. So in terms of where China is versus where America is in terms of the quality of living, standard of living, America is still probably a little bit ahead, but China is advancing very fast. A lot of the infrastructure that China has been building, wages are going up in China, standard of living is going up, and it's happening very, very, very fast. Very, very, very fast. Do you think there is a lack of free speech as a problem, or do you think that their censorship is overblown? Yeah, I think it's overblown. Like, of course America wants you to believe that China is this censorious, crazy state. Just go on Chinese social media for 30 minutes. Spend 30 minutes on Chinese social media. And the whole concept of Chinese censorship, you're just going to be like, yeah, nah. Like, when America discusses Chinese censorship, it really is them confessing that, oh, China won't allow us to put fascist propaganda on their system. China won't allow us to incite a color revolution. China won't allow us to find junta groups and fund far-right groups to overthrow their government. Censorship. Right? And of course, the language that they use, the code that they use is pro-democracy groups. Right? America funds pro-democracy groups. Because what we have in America is democracy, and what China has is not democracy, even though it is a democracy. But that's fine. It's not a Westminster parliamentary democracy, so it's not democracy. There's people openly criticizing the CCP on Chinese social media. Genuine question. 6, I think you've proven already that you're genuine, so you don't need to preface any of that stuff. I'm gonna be really straight with you, bud. I think you're being really nice. You're being a really calm guy. I can tell that you're a good person with a good heart. You're not trying to like, haha, get me. You're not trying to be like, fuck you, bro. You're not trying to like show me how smart you are or any of that kind of shit. Like, you seem like you're here to be genuine, and I believe that. So feel free to ask difficult questions, and I won't be offended by it, because I think you're being a good bro and a good dude, and I want to thank you for that. By the way, some people really come in here and really think that they know what's going on, and then the second I push back on them, they collapse. But then they double down, right? So there's people openly criticizing the CCP on Chinese social media. Yes, absolutely. I've got one fellow, a regular in my chat, who is very outspoken about China and the Chinese government, and is very knowledgeable in that regard. And like, you can just go see it for yourself, man. Like, you really can. Get a VPN, go to Chinese social medias. It's easy to do. Like most of the narratives surrounding China, I'll just do it right now. Most of the narratives surrounding China really, really fall apart the moment that you actually do any investigation whatsoever. So China, let's just do a China walk around. I just love showing the China walkarounds because they really give you a much clearer sense of what China actually looks like and what's actually happening in China, right? That people's perceptions of what China looks like or how China actually is often don't match what the place actually looks like now. China is a highly modern society. Its infrastructure, its transit infrastructure is superior to ours, and not by a little, but by a significant margin. In the space of about 10 years, they built 200,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. We don't have a single kilometer of high-speed rail built. China has blown us right out of the water on this point. And China has also built what they call the Belt and Road Initiative, which is to take that high-speed rail network and send it across the entire continent. So they've sent that rail into Russia, into Europe, into the Middle East, with plans to send it all across Africa, and with plans to help modernize Africa. Yeah, damn, that's a dope city. Yep, this is one city in China, right? China went through an enormous boom through the 80s and 90s. They built literally cities out of nothing. They built so many cities that they were building replicas of cities. There is a replica of the city of Paris in China. There are replicas of Russian cities in China. That China had never built this type of infrastructure before, and so they essentially looked at other cities and said, why don't we use this city as a practice city and just rebuild that city? And they did that. And they've done it again and again and again. So it's and this has taught them how to build, and now they have a new generation of architecture that is doing stuff like this, and is building the next generation and the next iteration of Chinese architecture. China and China's a beautiful, beautiful place, and this is just one city, right? And what's brilliant about all of their cities is that they're all different. They all have a different character. They're all unique, and then they have districts within the cities that are unique and different and interesting and eclectic. They've really made the decision to beautify their cities on purpose, and they're making, like, I've watched hundreds of hours of these walk around videos. You know what I never see? You know what I never ever see? Homeless people. I never see homeless people. I never see dirt. I never see like trash on the streets. I never see this shit. Right? And of course there's the argument that, like, yeah, the guy's going to walk through the nicest neighborhoods, of course, right? But it's easy to find videos of like Philadelphia, right? Detroit, just Skid Row. Where's Skid Row in China? right? Skid Row is in Los Angeles, and it's just loaded with homeless people and drug addicts, just broken down people, right? Doesn't exist in China. I've never seen it, right? I think it would be easy to find. Couldn't that have a lot to do with their crime policies? Can you be more specific? Because I find that people have this kind of strange view of the Chinese people, as if the Chinese people are living in a state of terror of their government, that everybody is like, don't speak out against the government or else they'll come for you. And it just doesn't seem like that's the relationship at all. That the relationship between the people and their government is actually fairly symbiotic and fairly in tune. That the Chinese government, the communists, the Communist Party of China is not governing with an iron fist. Chroma, that city looks so cool. Yeah, this isn't even one of the cooler cities, actually. What do you think causes petty crime? Poverty. Poverty causes petty crime. The only reason for a person to steal is out of a sense of necessity, and if you have if you have wealth, you just don't need to steal. So poverty creates crime, for sure. To my knowledge, they have much stricter rules on general crime. No, like theft. I think it could be described as standard. Like, the reason why China gets this reputation for being much more harder on crime is because they actually arrest capitalists for doing shit, right? So in 2008, we had the financial collapse, right? We went through the financial collapse in 2008, and the punishment that was doled out to the capitalists that were responsible for doing it was that we gave them $250 billion and said, don't do it again, right? So a similar thing happened fairly recently in China, where they experienced a fairly large market crash and they experienced a fairly large difficulty that was caused by capitalists. And they arrested those capitalists, like literally in jail, prison cells, capitalists in prison. They fined those capitalists, so they made the capitalists pay for the crime, right? And then they issued out, several of them were issued death sentences. Most of which were commuted, by the way. That China has been developing itself along these lines. But because it actually incarcerates capitalists, because it actually grabs the capitalist class, the bourgeois class, and imprisons them for crimes, this means China is, oh wow, oh god, tough on crime. Oh my god, they actually make capitalists face consequences for their crimes. So China's tough on crime, all right. Yeah, China's tough on crime. In terms of, like, its crimes against, like, regular stuff, like fraud, theft, any of that kind of stuff, it's pretty normal. It's normal, right? Like, and it pays to remember that the Chinese system, the Chinese legal system, is still primarily a military legal system. That it still comes from the Maoist period, right? And the Maoist period was straight up military generals, right? So I say that most of the things that you hear about China are extremely overblown. Like the social credit system is like completely overblown in our country. The people who whinge on about the social credit score have no problem with their credit score. They literally have a credit score, but because it's a capitalist credit score, that's somehow fine. Nor do they actually understand how the credit system actually works in China, that it's actually really banal and boring, that China didn't have a system for how do you punish financial crimes, right? How do you make it known to the financial system that exists in China that this person did a crime, and so you should deal with him in such a way, yabba yabba. Well, they created a social what's called a social credit score, right? And what that means is that if you commit fraud, right, like, so if you're guilty of a crime, they put that on your record, and it means that you don't have access to certain financial systems, right? So instead of putting you in jail, instead of incarcerating you, they say, oh, well, your crime is financial, so your punishment will be financial. And they allow you to walk around freely in China, and they allow you to do all that kind of stuff, but they're not going to let you interact with certain financial systems. That's basically what the social credit score does. The idea that it's like, you're a good Chinese citizen, the CCP loves you, plus social credit, is baby brain. It's just deeply stupid. Something that only a fascist could believe. And so most people believe it. Dude, I want to go to a nicer... not to say that this is not a nice city, but I want to go... Yeah, this is where I want to go. Dude, I love these China walk-around videos, man. I'm so happy I found these. I love walk-around videos. I love doing walk-around videos of... let's just dart ahead a little bit. Look at this shit, dude. This is so good. I love doing walk-around videos of different countries and different societies and different cultures. Because they really put into perspective what's actually going on in those cities. Look at this. Just fucking look at this. Like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, if you're gonna stand up and tell me that China is some kind of dystopian hellscape, like, I don't know, bro. Like, if their standard of living is even remotely close to mine, while they're living like this, they're fine. Geez, is there any city this nice in North America? Yeah, maybe Vancouver? No. No, the nice cities in North America are the ones that have embraced the natural beauty. The ones that have actually said, oh, there's a lot of, like, water and a lot of forests and a lot of that kind of stuff. And so the neighborhoods that are the most beautiful in Canada, at least, are the ones that have really tried to let the natural beauty speak for itself. The problem that we face, right? Like, so the question arises, how come we can't build infrastructure like this? Why can't we get infrastructure like this built? Well, there's a good reason for it. And that reason is the system of capital, right? That it doesn't make money for capitalists to finish projects. It makes money for capitalists to keep projects going, right? So I'll go to the very clean and simple example of high-speed rail, right? How come we can't get high-speed rail built? It would obviously benefit us. It would benefit us in a major way to have high-speed rail systems, for sure. Like, imagine being able to travel from Toronto to Montreal in less than an hour, right? That would be extremely beneficial to the citizens of Canada. That would be extremely, right? So, VFRO is essentially nailing it on the head, which is to say we're too corrupt, can't allocate resources properly. But this is the process. I'll literally tell you what happens, step by step. So let's say we decide we want high-speed rail, right? Step one, we want a high-speed rail from Toronto to Montreal. Cool. Let's say we even get a politician that's like, this is a good idea. Yeah, it's a really good idea. We should do this, right? Let's say the politician even does like a research project and is like, this is going to cost this much, it's going to take this much time, this is great, right? So they need to chart a path and say, oh, we're going to build the rail along this line. Okay, so let's say the project will cost $10 billion. Okay, so the second the project is announced, right, the second the research project is being, not even announced, the second the research is being done and the research comes out, the capitalists will buy the land that the rail is planned to go on. They will buy the land, and then all of a sudden your $10 billion project is a $100 billion project. Because oh, suddenly I own the land, and I'm just gonna I'll let the government buy that land for $100 billion-trillion. Okay, so let's say the government actually does negotiate the capitalists. And let's say the government actually negotiate, because they're not going to just take the land, right? Because they work for the capitalists, right? So they're going to negotiate with the capitalists, and the capitalists, instead of getting $100,000 for the land, they'll get $2 million for the land, and it'll be a total crapshoot. It'll be a total disaster. It'll take forever. It'll go to the courts. It'll be this huge fiasco. It'll take years to resolve, but the government ends up with the land. Okay, government could have seized the land, but okay. So now they need somebody to actually build the rail. Okay. So the politician hires their buddy, right? Because that's how it actually works. The politician hires their buddy, who's a developer. And the developer thinks, oh, I have a contract with the government. That's a bottomless well. That's a bottomless black hole of money. Sure, I can get it done in 2 years. Oh, sorry. Need another year. Oh, sorry. Need another year. Oh, we need more money. Oh, yeah, we're over budget. We need more money. Oh, sorry, we need another year. Yeah, sorry, we need another year. Oh, sorry, we need another year. And the whole time the politician is just like, well, I guess they just need another year. I guess we have to hand out some more money to my buddy. And so the project, a project that takes China literally 2 weeks to do, takes us 10 years. Like, and why does it take China 2 weeks to do it? Because they built a system that says, hey, build that. And they go, okay. And then they go do it. Yeah, you mean like the Irvings building ships for the Navy? Watson, good to see you. Yeah, it's called Triple P, Public-Private Partnerships. Socialize the cost, privatize the profits. Otherwise known as fascism. Fascism. Does the U.S. not have this figured out with eminent domain? Technically, the rules are in place that the government can do it, but they don't. And they don't for very clear reason, which is that it doesn't benefit the capitalists, right? You got to really remember, the political class is bought by the system of capital. There's no such thing as a politician who's just like responding to the needs of the public and then passing initiatives. And there's certainly no such thing as a politician that's being confronted by a capitalist and going, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to stand up to you, Rockefeller, and we're going to push the line through anyway. That's not how that works. That if the Morgans or the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds or Chase Manhattan Bank or the Vanguard or BlackRock or Elon Musk or Gates or Zuckerberg show up at your doorstep and say, I want this, you go, yes, my lord. Yes, my liege lord, please bestow upon me great immaculate gifts to send to my children. And what's so embarrassing, though, the most embarrassing part about it is that as the politicians are like, yes, my liege lord. Yes, my liege lord. The bribe that they're taking is literally like $10,000. Like, you think that we would get sold out for like a lot of money, but it's not. Like, oftentimes it's like a $5,000 donation. And the politicians are just like, sure, we can bulldoze that orphanage. $5,000, sweet. I can buy season tickets to the Knicks. Like, that's how cheap these politicians can be bought. VFRO continues, insanely enough, they even do that with time and environment-sensitive nuclear projects. With the 3 Mile Island cleanup after the meltdown, which happened due to cutting corners for more profit, the company hired for cleanup kept requesting more money, going over budget, and was still cutting safety corners and lying to the public about health hazards. Yeah. They just keep needing more time and more money. Yep. And it's because at the end of the day, the politicians say, I guess they just need more time and more money. Because they get a kickback, right? That's what it is. Because the system is just a series of vanity projects by narcissists who are trying to make their own money. Because incidentally, that's the whole theory. Okay? Like, America and American politics comes into sharp focus when you realize what their theory is, and that everybody is operating on this theory, believing that it's good and it's the right thing to do. And Milton Friedman articulated it kind of, but I articulate it much better and much cleaner because Milton Friedman was a fraud. The theory of capitalism, okay, and their scientific theory of capital is worship money, right? So put money at the top of everything. The profit motive. The goal is to gain as much money as possible, right? Money. Cut costs. Do what you need to do to increase your profit margins, right? 1, 2, only focus on yourself. So everyone is self-interested. We all say out loud constantly that everyone is self-interested in operating in their own self-interest, even though there's a lot of evidence to show that that's not the case. But that's the claim that we're going to make, that everyone is selfish and self-interested, in spite of all of the evidence. Because again, like, this is a failed theory. It's actually a religious ideology now. Like, it's no longer a scientific theory. It's a religious ideology. So worship money, worship of the self. And then the final point is, the third point is the worship of chaos, or what they call the free market, right? Let the free market decide. The invisible hand of the free market will decide. And so what you end up with is a culture, a society of people that are selfishly pursuing profits in a chaos-driven trading iterating system. And everybody acknowledges within that system that this is true and appropriate and correct and right to do, right? This is the best way to organize a society to maximize everybody's freedom, right? This is the language that they use. These are the narratives that they use. Well, it's wrong. And how do we know it's wrong? You're looking at it on the screen right now. The Chinese were running under a different theory, and that theory is Marxism. That and stands in opposition to the theory of capital, right? The religious ideology of capital. So instead of the worship of money as the prime virtue, as the prime force, that America makes the claim that power originates from money. Power originates from money. The Chinese said power comes from manufacturing. Power comes from the means of production, right? And who controls the means of production? That's where power emanates from. It doesn't emanate from money. That money is merely the medium of exchange that we use in order to organize the means of production, as well as distribute goods into the society, but that the means of production themselves is what power is, where power flows and where power comes out of. The Americans showed clearly that they did not think that this was true, because they were willing to ship their manufacturing to China in exchange for increased profits. So in order to get more money that their own government is responsible for printing, the capitalists shipped the center of Marxist theory, the means of production, they shipped their manufacturing base over to the people that were saying seize the means of production. This is how blind the capitalists are. The capitalists are so blinded by their religious ideology that they are willing to sell the goose that lays the golden egg to the people that are saying, clearly the goose is better than the golden egg. So the Chinese theory, the means of production is the center of power. Community, that prosperity should be shared. That a rising tide should actually lift all boats. So it's not the worship of the self. It's the acknowledgement that community, that the prosperity should be spread into the entire society if you want to have a stable society. that if you leave people behind, they rightfully will turn against you, right? And so the Chinese do enact policies of wealth distribution and do seek to redistribute wealth in the society to ensure that prosperity is somewhat shared. It still does have disparity in its populace. There is still inequality in the populace, which they knew was going to happen. But they are enacting policies in order to spread that prosperity throughout China. And they understand that they have to do that because that's how you actually build a civilization. And that stands against the capitalist theory of the self, right? So just focus on yourself versus focus on your community, focus on your culture, focus on your society, your civilization. And then number 3, the Chinese actually plan, right? They actually sit down and plan things. The American or the Western theory is the free market. The free market will decide. And so what you end up with is a bunch of different feudal kingdoms, essentially, competing with one another, constantly reinventing the wheel and getting in each other's way. Whereas the Chinese system is, no, we should all face in the same direction. We should all have the same plan. We should all have the same initiatives, the same ideas, the same thoughts. And if there is conflict, like if 2 different parties are intersecting with one another in conflict, then we're going to work that out and put them back on the path to face forward so that all of the energy goes in one direction and we are organized. And we plan the society that way, to be organized in that way. It's clearly more successful. Clearly more successful. China is the industry leader in most high-tech industry. China built its own space base when it was told it couldn't. Like, it was told it wasn't allowed to join the International Space Station, so it built its own space station just by itself. It's set to build a moon base. If there is a people who actually do get to Mars, it will absolutely be the Chinese. Elon Musk has proven to be a total farce. Literally all he was doing was helping the United States military militarize space. That's all he was doing. And and so the Chinese theory has proven to be true, and that's the theory of Marxism. And the American theory has proven to be incorrect, which means that anybody who is still a capitalist is now just following a religious ideology. Like, if somebody was to stand up and say, I'm an alchemist, you wouldn't consider them a serious scientist. If somebody were to stand up and say, I'm a phrenologist, you wouldn't consider them a serious scientist. If somebody were to stand up and say, I think the earth is flat, well, you wouldn't consider them a serious scientist. And if somebody were to stand up and say, well, I'm a capitalist, then you wouldn't consider them a serious economist. And first of all, Just Me says, everybody don't forget to hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe. Hit those bells. Hit those whistles. Give me some money. Just give me some money. Just don't even think about it. Just reach into your back pocket, pull out a $5 bill, send it to my Patreon. Money. Do it.
Do it. Give me money. Give me money. Turn me into a capitalist like these filthy, filthy capitalists. Money is evil and bad, so give it all to me.
The money is a deep, dark, black hole in your heart, and you need to reach deep down inside of your soul and pull that money out and send it to the link and you see in the description, and that'll help cleanse your soul of the deep poison of money. I really look forward to a time when I don't need to ask anybody for money ever again. I hope it happens. I actually have a challenge for the universe, and I say it all the time, which is, so if the theory of manifestation is true, the universe should make me extremely rich because I'm just going to walk around handing out money. Like, I'll walk down a city street like this with a bushel full of $1,000, like just wads of $1,000, and I'll just hand it out. And I'll have somebody following me, filming me, and that'll be the content that I create. And I'll just be like, yeah, everybody should just give their money. Zuckerberg, where are you at? Give your money to the poor. And I'll just create a cultural phenomenon of giving money away. And I'll literally say to anybody who says, you shouldn't give your money away to the poor, they'll just use it for drugs. I'll just be like, shut up, loser. Fucking loser. Give your money to the poor. Shut up. 6 says, off-topic question. Do you think the progression of Africa economically has been stifled by lack of energy production largely based on Western influence? It's a tough one for me because while I believe in global warming, it seems hypocritical. Africa's economic progress has always been because of colonization. The Western forces came into Africa and they colonized Africa, and so any benefit that the Africans have had, they have to ship off to Africa, and so that's of course stifled their economic growth. And so I don't think it's so much based on the lack of energy production, so much as it is that like the only time they're able to actually develop is in the face of colonial power, and that colonial power doesn't give a fuck about them. It only wants to extract as much wealth as they possibly can get away with. Yeah, my big gripe with progressives is if they stop shitting on billionaires. Well, I mean, the progressive movement has really sort of revealed itself to be kind of not serious, in my view. That, like, I talked very loudly, very recently, to you about how politicians are performers. They're performative. That they're pursuing vanity projects, right? Well, that includes AOC. That includes Bernie Sanders. That includes the progressives in the caucus, the progressive caucus, or whatever you want to call it, right? They're just playing the good guy game, right? Their game is rah-rah policy that we'll never enact, right? Or if we do enact it, it'll be a piecemeal reform over 5 years kind of thing, right? We'll give you a 1.2% increase over 10 years, and we'll call that progressivism. Like, Bernie Sanders would be a conservative in Canada. Like, he wouldn't, the Iron Dome AOC, yeah. And like AOC especially has really proven that she's completely willing to go along with anything. Like she's just playing baseball now. Like she's just playing ball. And so these people are fine using this like rah-rah lefty rhetoric, but I haven't seen anything that shows me they're interested in it. Nothing serious really. So I think that they're just playing the good guy in the WWE game, right? They're the Hulk Hogan. They're the people who come out and say, wow, what a beautiful crowd. What a lovely group of people we have here. Now, we know that all Americans are good people, and we're trying to fight for what's right for America, right? And the other side of the conversation are the heels, right? That the Trumps and the Cruzes and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Gates and all these guys, they've realized that there's truck with being the heel. That you can come out and be like, these guys are assholes and frauds. Biden's gay, right? You can just act like that, and that gains truck. Because the system of capital has abandoned enough people that there's enough people that are pissed off with the system that they're willing to lob grenades at it. And Donald Trump is a grenade. Progressives have given up actual political power for dominance in social media. They never had political power. I think that's really important to understand. They never actually had political power, right? That what you are seeing is a branding exercise and nothing else, right? They learned from Obama. Obama was a branding exercise, right? That he proved to a lot of people that if you stand up, smooth talk, say the right things, sound statesmanly, have a message, hope and change, right? The whole poster, right? The red and blue poster that we all saw that became iconic, right? That Obama wasn't a great politician. He was an exceptional marketer. He was an excellent salesman. And that's how he became the president, is by selling a product, and that product was him. That first black president, first hope and change for the future, right? Which, incidentally, is the same platform that John McCain ran on. But Obama was just a better salesman, right? Look at this shot right here. Look at that. That's crazy, dude. There's nothing like that in North America. Just beautiful. Just crazy that it exists. And so the progressives learned from Obama. And what they learned from Obama was you just need to have one platform. And honestly, the platform that the progressives are banging on about, the entire rest of the world is already done. Healthcare. From the perspective of Canada and the perspective of Europe, let alone the rest of the world, what's going on in America is fascistic. It's insane to us that you are all allowing your healthcare system to be privatized this way. It is abhorrent to us. We're shocked by it on the regular. Nothing has declined and diminished the prestige of America on the world stage more than the healthcare issue. Like, a show like Breaking Bad could not exist without this situation. It's an abomination. It's a horror show. And so to stand up and say, hey, we should do what literally every other nation has already done and shown and proven to be effective, to say that is not a extreme radical lefty position. I would argue that that's actually a right-wing conservative position. Hey, wait a minute. You mean that we can pass legislation that will allow this product to be dispensed into the public cheaper, faster, more efficiently, and better? What are we doing here? Let's go. That's a right-wing conservative position. It's not a lefty liberal. It's not a lefty. I got a crazy idea, everybody. Like, that's not what it is. This is a highly tested, done for decades now, not experimental at all, proven to function, proven to work, highly popular social policy that America doesn't do because America is a psychopathic nation, ruled by psychopaths, very clearly ruled by psychopaths. And so Sanders, just like AOC and the Squad and all these guys, he's not standing up and saying healthcare for everybody because he's a good man who wants to see all this shit happen for everybody. He's saying it because he could be the president. It's a vanity project. He wants to be the fucking president. They all want to be the fucking president. And they're all going to take their stab at it. And he took his stab at it with the statements that he makes. And he gained some truck with it. And so he kept running with it. And in that way, he's not much different than someone like Trump. Trump says the things that he says because when he says them, people clap. And if people didn't clap, he wouldn't say them. Right? He's a reactionary. He's just reacting. Yeah, Bernie got shafted by the DNC in 2016, but he's still playing ball with them, right? Like, I think it's possible that Bernie Sanders becomes the leader of the Democratic Party. Like, I think a Sanders presidency is possible. Like, after 4 years of Trump, I think that the DNC is out of options, right? They don't have anybody else. And they can't just continuously, I mean, they could if they wanted to, I suppose, just keep defrauding Sanders, but I don't know. He's going to be almost 90 in 2028. Yeah, so what? Like, who cares anymore? Like, really? Like, it's not going to be too long until, like, the president will literally just be a corpse. They'll just wheel a corpse out in front of us. And they'll just be like... Yeah, we should have all been skeptical of AOC when she got a Netflix documentary, yeah. The progressive movement was to herd people ready for communism to come back to the Democratic Party. I think that's right. That the Democrats and the Democrats and the Republicans really do exist to just be a graveyard for movements. Like, they wanted to funnel the Occupy movement into the Democratic Party, and the Occupy movement wouldn't be funneled, and so they cleared the encampments. Right? If the Occupy movement had have allowed itself to be funneled into the Democratic Party, those encampments would probably still be there. They'd be like official structures now, right? They'd allow them to set up like quasi-permanent tents and like quasi-permanent structures, and they'd like rename Zugatti Park to like Occupy Park, right? Because the whole movement would have been completely defanged by joining the Democratic Party. Betting odds still have Biden at 18% to drop out before the election. Kind of crazy. Bit late in the game now. Yeah. Biden stepping down. I mean, maybe he'll just die, right? Like, there's always that. Maybe he'll just die. Maybe it'll literally be the first debate, and Biden will just be like, come on, Jack. We got, and then he'll die. Leaving everybody in the lurch. Nobody will know who to vote for, and like Trump will just walk in. Like, I'm still alive. And everybody will be like, you are still alive. It kind of sucks. Kamala is the least likable person ever. What, you don't like a cop? You don't like a cop that's like a traitor to her own people? You're not a fan of a black woman that locks up black men for nothing? You're not a fan of that? I thought that Americans loved that shit. Ate that shit up. I mean, your prison system is an indication of it. Okay, guys. We've reached the end of this one. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.